Ladies and gentlemen, it is so wonderful to see you all over here, and it is an absolute pleasure to welcome you all to the second edition of the Accel AI Summit 2025, Engineering India's AI Advantage. My name is Ramona Arena, and I am honored to be your host this evening. We are joined today by some of the top minds in AI who are collectively shaping the future of this transformative field. This evening is all about engineering the next phase of India's AI journey and giving escape velocity to our ambitions so that India not only claims its rightful place, but also emerges as a globally dominant force in AI. Later tonight, we will celebrate some of the exceptional individuals driving this momentum as we unveil the inaugural Forbes and Accel AI list, a tribute to Indian origin pioneers that are making significant global contributions in AI. How great is that? Can we have a round of applause? So to commence this evening's program, please join me in welcoming Prayank Swaroop, partner at Accel and a leading early-stage investor in AI, to deliver the opening remarks. Over to you, Prayank.
Bengaluru, we are IPL champions. Yeah? Ee Sala Cup Namadu. Yes? All right. So, pardon me if I'm like a little loose because yesterday night I slept quite late. I was partying the cup win. But, you know, if you want to know where AI is being built and what holds in the future, you have to just look around. This is the room. This room has the signal. You know, we have here founders, researchers, policymakers, and enterprises all sitting in one room for this same reason, that you guys are not participants in the story of Indian AI. You are actually the architects. Where the future of Indian AI is going to be is from all the people in this room, and all of you are contributing towards it. And that is why we have done this event. We at Accel believe AI is actually underhyped. We don't think people truly realize the power of AI, how much AI is going to impact all the things which we do in life. Just imagine, you know, for 100 rupees a month, you can have a personal doctor, you can have a personal teacher, and you can have a personal financial planner. It is going to change the lives of billions of people. And that is what AI has the power. And India, in specific, has the right set of ingredients to make this transformation and lead this transformation. And there were 3 ingredients of those. The first is obviously the talent. You know, you see here, India's got talent. We have a highest number of AI-ready engineers. We have the highest number of AI researchers. And we are producing them at a pace which is unprecedented. And it is not just about quantity. It is about depth, quality, and cost effectiveness. The second is obviously that India has got data sets. From UPI to Aadhaar to DigiLocker, we sit on top of very high-quality real-world data sets, which are obviously the fuel for all AI models and all AI innovation. And finally, third, we have policy making at its best right now. We have a government which is backing innovation in principle and in infrastructure. The India AI mission has just started with $1.25 billion support for startups, compute, and for open models. But I'm pretty sure that the way things are, we'll get even more support from policy. So I'm pretty excited about this. And just imagine, in 2035, we are slated to be a $10 trillion public market economy in just a decade or so. And that value creation is not going to happen from companies of yesteryears. It's going to happen from people in this room, AI-native startups. And that is what is very exciting for us. And this is not a pipe dream. This is already happening. You know, you have a look at startups in HSR. You have a look at startups in Koramangala and elsewhere, startups in Delhi, startups in Bombay. Obviously, IIT Chennai needs no introduction. Like, IIT Chennai is everywhere. I love IIT Chennai. So we have Emma, for example, which is reinventing and reimagining the way agentic AI is going to be created in all of enterprise. We have Arivihan, which is supporting millions of students with hyper-personalized education all across Bharat. So we are already seeing those signals that this is going to happen. And yes, we believe a lot of these startups will become $100 billion outcomes. So this is immensely important that all of us in this room come together. You know, the mission is not a simple mission. The opportunity is so vast, so complex, and so important that it is not about one founder, one institution, or one fund which is going to do it alone. We all have to come together. So that is what we are here for. And yes, India has its skeptics. It's very funny, but we have disappointed optimists, and also we have disappointed the pessimists. Growth in India is not linear, but the great thing is growth in India is there. It will happen. It's happening, and all of us have to go together. That's why we have curated this summit with intent, so that we can get together founders, policymakers, researchers, enterprises together, because if we all work in silos, we'll all lose. So that is why it is important that we all collaborate together with urgency and trust, so that we can unlock the full force of India's AI mission. And that is the ask from all of you. So please, tonight, please talk openly, partner boldly, and make sure that you go out of your comfort zone and see how the future can be together. And we have to move together with a conviction that comes from knowing that what we are building together is far greater than us. We are doing this not just for our firm, not just for our institution, but for India, and that is the ask from us, and we are here for it. So India's AI mission does not require, just permission. It needs ignition, and that's why we need all of your support. So with that, thank you, and we will start the sessions. Thanks.
So thank you so much, Priyank, for setting the context for this evening's program. To build on what Priyank spoke about and to provide a deep dive into white spaces, emerging trends, and opportunities in the global AI landscape, we're pleased to welcome Vas Natarajan, partner at Accel's global office in San Francisco, to offer an overview on the most compelling insights shaping the future of AI. Big round of applause for him, please.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. When Priyank asked me to do this keynote, he said, we're having this big AI summit, and we really need someone from the Valley to come speak on what's happening over there. And I said, Priyank, AI is already at the heart of India, right? You cannot spell India without an A or an I. And he didn't laugh, just like you guys, and so here I am. Here I am, delivering the keynote. I'm Vas. I have been at Accel for about 16 years now. I'm a partner on the early stage side, so I do mostly seed and Series A investments. And I would say, without hyperbole, this is the most exciting, most energized time I've ever experienced in my investing career. I've been there for the SaaS wave. I've been there for the mobile wave. And when you think about those two shifts, SaaS and mobile were very much innovations of delivery, of consumption. We took traditional application software that was hosted on-premise, and we moved it into a cloud data center so that anyone could access it on any device. We miniaturized that software so that anyone could have access to it on a mobile form factor. You could actually access compute in your pocket. SaaS and mobile were really about expanding the reach of software technology. And I think the thing that gets me so excited now is AI is really a shift in computational capability. I mean, the things that we can do, the things that we can compute, the work that we can accomplish, the problems that we can solve are vastly, vastly different than any generation of software before us. We have had the incredible, incredible good fortune to experience this wave through the eyes of some incredible companies, businesses like Cursor and Gamma and Decagon and Emma, Speak, Scale AI, one of the leading data processing and infrastructure providers out there. You know, the number of domains that founders are touching far exceeds anything that we've seen. You know, I go to the Y Combinator demo day multiple times a year, and you know, Y Combinator for us in the Valley is very much an index of innovation. It's the tip of the spear. It's the youngest, most ambitious technical founders. 10, 15 years ago, you know, you heard a set of ideas that would cluster around a specific norm. You know, it would be business intelligence software, data infrastructure, workplace applications, collaboration tools, you know, some of the canonical categories that obviously have yielded very, very big winners. But you go to Demo Day now and you see all of the different domains that founders are taking AI. I mean, they're touching robotics, insurance, banking and financial services, pharmaceutical services, biologics. I mean, it's just incredible to think about the looming spread of technology. You know, software historically has been about 5 to 10% of global GDP, and I am a big believer that AI is going to help us take it that last 90%. And the other thing that amazes me, I'm sure you guys have read some of the press reports on this, but these are some of the fastest growing companies we have ever witnessed. You know, I think about the 4-minute mile. You know, that was a feat of, that was an incredible physical accomplishment that humanity finally achieved, I think it was in the 80s or 90s, you know, when someone finally ran the 4-minute mile. And thereafter, many people were able to accomplish the 4-minute mile. Thousands of people have been able to do it now. And in some ways, in our business, we have just run the 4-minute mile. You know, it used to take 5 to 7 years to reach $100 million of ARR. But now companies are routinely getting there in 5 to 7 months. I mean, it's literally taking less than a year to reach enormous levels of scale and success. And why is that? What can we understand about some of the fastest growing AI companies in the Valley right now? I think first and foremost, you know, the timing is right. As we talked about the SaaS and mobile wave, you know, these markets have been conditioned for almost 15 years to source software, buy software, procure software, implement software. So we're just at a very mature time in the market right now where everyone is looking for new pieces of technology. At the same time, you know, model costs are coming down. The dollar per token, or the cost of inference, has been falling precipitously. You know, for the past decade, we as investors would keep a sharp eye on our AWS or our GCP costs, because the cost of compute and storage and networking were so significant for these businesses. So you look at that cost curve of compute, and you map that relative to the cost of inference, and the curve is so steep. It's getting so cost-effective now to use these models, and so that's broadening access of these APIs to a broader set of global entrepreneurs. You know, many of the companies that we've invested in have incredibly quick time to value. I think this is probably one of the most important dynamics of this generation of AI company. If you think about prior SaaS businesses, you know, you think of a system of record like a CRM, you only got value out of that CRM once you'd uploaded all of your data into it, right? There was a setup and an installation time to actually getting to a point where you could extract value from that application. You think about collaboration tools businesses like a Monday.com or an Asana. You know, it required everyone in your organization to finally adopt the product and actually collaborate with one another You got to experience the network effect. That was the power of those applications. But AI today, these companies are delivering value out of the box. You don't need to wait to upload a bunch of data. You don't need to wait for all of your coworkers to hop on these systems. I mean, the single-player utility is almost immediate. And I would say all of these companies are ruthlessly focused on continuing to shave down complexity. How do we take clicks, screens, buttons out of the process so that we can get our end users to their intended outcome as quickly as possible? I'll touch briefly on two of the fastest growing companies in the Accel portfolio that I think hopefully can be archetypes or models for things that we are to do to build here in the States. So I led the seed in the Series A in a company called Gamma. I don't know if anyone has used Gamma. It's a presentation tool. Any hands? Okay. Paying subscribers? All of you paying subscribers? Yes? Okay, good. Gamma looked at the presentation software landscape and they said, it takes so much time and effort to go from idea to well-structured presentation, to build something beautiful, to take a thought and to be able to express that in a very powerful way. So how do we take all of that work and tuck that complexity behind a prompt? You look at a company like Cursor, which, as much as they're a developer tools business, I would actually call them a design firm. That team spends all of their time thinking about shaving down every little pixel in that experience so that the concept of being able to tab accept on a code edit is just so ergonomic and so delightful. Both of these companies, I think, really underscore what this next generation of AI company needs to focus on, which is incredible usability, a delightful experience, products that really touch an emotional need, and businesses that are really building an incredible brand around their product. 2 months ago, Gamma actually just launched its rebrand as a business, and we're just a Series A company. So we're sitting around the board and talking about this pending rebrand, and one of our other investors had to ask the question. He said, well, Grant, why are we doing this big rebrand? We're just, we're such a young business. Most companies do these large launches much later in their maturity curve. And the founder said something really powerful. They said, look, we can't just be another presentation software company. The supply side of software is commoditizing so quickly. We have to stand for something that's very unique. We need to build a brand that our end users are really motivated by. That, I think, is going to be a big challenge for entrepreneurs, especially in this room. It's, as Priyank was mentioning, there's so much great technical talent in India. But increasingly, I'm seeing the best founders in the Valley are able to blend that technical expertise with an almost liberal arts understanding of story, of narrative, of brand, of UI, of UX. And to be able to package that together, that is what is leading to outsized success. I'd say lastly, both of these companies spend a lot of time thinking about their data interaction patterns. They have built in, fundamentally into their product, an implied notion of reinforcement learning. So anytime you tab accept inside of Cursor, anytime you accept and edit inside of Gamma, that is information that those companies are using to create a better experience going forward. Interaction data for historic SaaS companies, we always promised, there was always the promise of being able to use it to improve the service over time, and some companies definitely took advantage of it, but now the best companies are absolutely using that interaction data to figure out how to fine-tune models, how to deliver the right outcomes the next time those users come in. And so AI companies that are going to be breaking out need to think about how their end users are helping to inform their model efficacy. I am also here today not just because I'm a partner at Accel, but because I really deeply believe that there are going to be many billion-dollar businesses built globally. Again, if you think about AI touching the other 90% of global GDP, that is an enormous, enormous market of revenue for companies to be able to go out and harvest. I think to build those billion-dollar revenue businesses, one can certainly fight the wars of the gammas and the cursors, the very bottoms-up, organic, PLG-type businesses. But I would also encourage founders in this room to really lean into the unique advantages that India has to offer. Firstly, India comes from this great origin of service, of delivering solutions. I think about the Tatas and the Wipros and the Cognizants and the Infosys of the world. These are businesses whose DNA are about going into companies, understanding business logic, understanding workflow, and encoding that workflow into software. That is incredibly, incredibly valuable DNA to have. Many of the fastest growing companies in the Valley right now that are touching some of these vertical domains, things like financial services or legal tech or healthcare, they're very young, ambitious founders, but they don't have the depth of domain expertise that I think exists inside of India. And so, founders in this room, entrepreneurs, we really need to take advantage of that. Having a human in the loop default to the company that you're designing. I had a CIO once tell me, he said, Vas, all the AI companies you keep sending me, they sound really interesting, but they all start their pitch by saying, hey, we're going to eliminate all these jobs. We're going to reduce labor inside of your organization. We're going to help you save costs. And the CIO had a very interesting point. He said, Vas, at the end of the day, all of the knowledge for how our company works is trapped inside of our team's mind. So we can't just replace those employees out of the gate. We need to find a way to embrace them and extend them. We need to give them tools that allow them to do more things to improve their throughput. So having a unique understanding, again, I think this comes back to the DNA that's very unique to India. It's about embracing the people part of the equation as much as it is about building technology. So how do we get there? I think, first and foremost, we're starting here by having a conversation in this room. Building $1 billion revenue business, I think, implies you have to be a global company from the get-go. This is a small commercial for Accel, quite frankly. You need to be with a global firm, someone who actually understands what it means to take an invention, a technology, and help you get installed worldwide to a global Fortune 5000 customer base. Obviously, we've talked about the focus on brand, the focus on UI and UX. These are critical day zero primitives as much as building great technology is. Understanding inference costs. Again, the dominant cost of goods inside of most of these software companies is the dollars you'll be spending on Anthropic and OpenAI. But increasingly, many of the best companies are finding ways to mediate the prompts that are coming in from their end users and figuring out how to source, open source models that can solve certain problems while reserving some of the thorniest problems for the more expensive proprietary models. So being very dynamic, being very light on your feet as it relates to your infrastructure. And then, of course, let's build great companies. Let's not build companies that are exclusively venture funded. Let's build companies that are funded by our customers. The one very interesting nuance in San Francisco right now is the metric that is being lionized among the best founders is ARR per employee. Everyone wants to get to this new magic number of $1 million of revenue per employee. We never talked about that over the last decade. For the last decade, it was all about how much could you fundraise and what was your last valuation. But now it's about how efficient can you build your business? Can you build an AI product, and can you actually build a company with AI now? Obviously, hopefully you figure this out after Accel has invested. But over time, I would anticipate more and more of the companies that are going to be built are going to be predominantly founder-owned, predominantly employee-owned, and that's a very, very good thing. So I will end by saying I see so much magic in the valley, but I am so motivated and so excited by the opportunity that is here in India. And I have full faith that, you know, a substantial plurality of the billion-dollar revenue businesses that are going to be built around this wave, I think is going to come from this country. And we're so excited to be part of it, to help out with that, and to cheer those successes on. So with that, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vas, for framing this evening's India-centric agenda with a larger global context in mind. The opening session for the evening is a fireside chat on a topic that lies at the heart of this summit: unlocking India's AI potential. This promises to be an insightful discussion as one speaker offers a perspective from the policy landscape and another from the VC landscape, both ecosystems that are critical pillars in driving India's AI agenda. Moderating this session is Network 18 anchor Chandra Shrikant. Joining her are two distinguished speakers, Padma Shri awardee Shri Prashant Prakash, partner at Accel, and Shri Abhishek Singh from MeetY. May I please request the moderator and speakers to come up on stage. Over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Singh. So Abhishek Singh is the lead of the India AI mission. Thank you very much for coming all the way from Delhi to Bangalore for the Accel AI Summit. Thank you, Prashant, and congratulations on the Padma Shri honor. We saw visuals of you receiving that from the President of India. A huge round of applause for him. Abhishek, let me start with you. You know, Vas spoke about how India should lean in to its strengths. And traditionally, we've been very strong in services. But what will it take to, you know, emerge as a leader across the block, whether it's innovation, research, at the foundational level? MeitY has taken steps towards that by picking some startups to build foundational models. But, you know, what is your own take on unlocking India's AI potential?
Like we all have heard about our strengths, and our core strength primarily has been our engineering talent, which has kind of translated into our strength in services, software services that we have been exporting. But once the talent is there, and it's the AI age, with talent you need two more ingredients, primarily compute and data sets. And the kind of compute that is required to train models, it's a resource hungry. And you require a lot of funds to be able to access that compute, to be able to develop AI models at scale. Unfortunately, the investment that is available from investors within India, of course, Accel is an outlier in that regard, but very often investors don't have the patience to wait for a long period. So to address that gap, to ensure that compute is number one available, and number two available at an affordable cost, Government of India's India AI mission has been playing a big role in trying to ensure that we are able to enable the ecosystem in which private sector partners are incentivized to invest in the compute infrastructure that our startups, researchers, academicians can access, entrepreneurs. And the number two, the second ingredient that's required is, of course, about having access to data sets. Again, government does have access to a lot of data sets across domains. So we are working on through the AI Kosh initiative in order to ensure that data sets are provided. And once these two basic ingredients, the compute and data sets, are made available, then our talented entrepreneurs, engineers, researchers, academicians can use that to train models and build state-of-the-art applications and foundation models that can compete with the best. So that's what India AI Mission is trying to do in order to support this. In addition, we do have a lot of initiatives in the R&D front, because if we have to really take a lead in all these cutting-edge technologies, we need to up our R&D expenditure, which is much below if we compare to the best in the world.
Right. Just to follow up on the compute, I think 34,000 GPUs is your overall target. So far, we have, what, 16,000?
No, we don't have a, see, the target that we started was to enable a minimum of 10,000 GPUs. So the way it's being done is that we are encouraging more and more investments into GPU infrastructure. For the first 2 rounds of tenders that we have done, empanelment that we have done, we have got a commitment of 34,000 GPUs, out of which around 18,000 GPUs are already in place, and the remaining will be set up in the next 2 to 3 months. In addition, the empanelment process is a continuous empanelment. So by the next round, which is closing on 9th of June, I expect another 16,000. So in the next 6 months, we will have around 50,000 GPUs, which will be secured through the India AI Mission. In addition, there are many other initiatives. There are many private sector players. Like, for example, Jio had announced a 1 gigawatt data center. Infosys is getting GPUs. Other private entities are getting GPUs. Academic institutions are getting GPUs. So overall availability in India of GPUs will go much beyond 50,000. But again, this number is much less compared to what's available elsewhere in the West.
Right. So for founder startups in this room who want to access these GPUs, how should they go about it? Will it again get into an infinite loop? Because
no, it's pretty straightforward. We have a India AI compute portal, which is like linked to all the empaneled vendors. So those who are wanting to get a GPU of a particular kind, from what is available, whether it's H100s or A100s or H200s, or now we have got Blackwells also offered by Yotta. So they will have to choose what they want, how many they want, for the period for which they want, and for the purpose for which they are using. And then if it is below a certain quantity, it's an auto approval. And if it's beyond a particular thing, like for example, Sarvam wanted 4,000 GPUs. So that will go through a process, and then allocation will be made. But normally all allocations are made within 2 weeks.
So no red tape, no delays.
Hopefully not. That's what we are trying to eliminate. Yeah.
Okay. Prashant, he covered the compute aspect of it, the data sets. The other important C is capital.
Yeah.
What's happening there?
No, I think again, there's good news. I think VCs have moved from curiosity to conviction, right? So there's no longer, I don't think any early stage fund worth its name is going to be on the sidelines on this AI. And Vas spoke about how transformative this is. And I think the early stage, just to kind of put some data in perspective, I think 18 months ago, we might have had totally about 20, 30 AI startups. Just in the last 18 months, we've added 250.
250 AI startups emerging from India?
From India, yes, just in the last 18 months.
Wow.
Right? And Accel has done 40 plus. So,
okay. And again, 6 months ago, VCs would tell us there's an issue with supply, we are not getting that much deal flow in AI. So you're saying that has changed?
Definitely it's changed. See, I think there used to be a huge lag, right, between what's happening in the Valley and what's happening in India. I think that lag is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And when you compare it to the SaaS, the SaaS wave that happened in India to now, I think that lag is even shorter. So I think there was maybe a 9-10 month period where Indian entrepreneurs were trying to understand really, and actually even the VCs were trying to understand what's India's right to win. And I think Vas spoke eloquently on where all, and I think a lot of that is now well understood by the VCs. And I think entrepreneurs are fast following and coming up with great ideas. And there's also a big diaspora, right? The Indian diaspora, and a lot of these startups are cross-border. So these startups are not just, you just don't have an Indian founder. So we are seeing more and more startups where day one you have the founder in India, in the US. So you could have been a founder from India who just moved 6 months ago, or just found somebody to work with in the US 3 months ago. So I think we are starting to see a lot more of these kind of collaborative acceleration in terms of how we will participate in this AI transformation.
Right. So, Prashant, you mentioned 240, 250 startups emerging in the last 18 months.
Yes.
I want to understand, are these existing startups that suddenly discovered that they
no,
can
no,
infuse
no,
AI?
not
are
necessarily.
these like fresh?
Yeah, these are AI first startups that have, they could be, of course, angel invested, seed invested. I'm talking across the spectrum. But no, they are, AI native startups that have just now, come up with an idea and there are people backing them.
Right. And are you seeing more application use
Yeah,
case
so that's,
driven?
I think that's a much more broader question. I think I would say 80% of them would be at the application layer. 10-15% would be in the platform.
Hold the mic closer, Prashant.
Sorry?
Hold your mic.
Yeah, so 10-15% would be in platform and infra, and maybe less than 2-3% in not just building foundational models, but maybe adapting foundational models for the country, and which we can talk about more. So it's not always coming up with a new model, but taking an open source model and making it work for the country.
Right. So, you picked Sarvam in April. Last week, you announced 3 more startups to build India's foundational model, which are, I think, Socket, Jnani, and Gun. So, for startups seeking to build a foundational model for India, how are you going about deciding, what criteria are you placing against these startups? Why were these 4 successful and, why not the rest?
These 4 are the first set of startups that have been selected. As you remember, when we had 30th of January, when we had kind of published the call for proposals for Indian startups to build foundation models, that time we had said that we will be inviting applications which will be due 15th of every month, and then we will be subsequently evaluating. And we published that. Our expectation was that there will be around 20 to 25 applications that will be coming all together. But within the first 2 weeks, the first due date was 15th, and we got almost 67 applications. 15th March, we got 120 more applications. By when we closed the final round and we said that let's complete the evaluations on 30th April, we have got a total of 506 applications. And the quality of these applications and the quality of the proposal that we have got are so good that it's taking a lot of time for us to evaluate.
So that's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have, and we had to kind of onboard experts from across the world to help us support to do that, because some of the brightest minds from outside India are also applying for the applications. In fact, gun.ai that you mentioned are 2 young Stanford graduates who are trying to come back and build a model here. Similarly, we have got applications from many other bright minds from India who would have gone to the US to get exposure to the best in there. And if they are thinking of coming back, and with the present situation that we see unfolding in the US, if that turns into an opportunity for us to see reverse brain drain, and if we are able to get the best to come to India and build applications trained on Indian data sets in Indian context, it will be a good problem to solve. So yes, we have got 4 in the first phase, but I expect that many more in the days to come will be announced.
What's a number and a timeline?
See, numbers will depend. See, numbers vary because not all of them are asking for the same number of GPUs, the costing. So numbers will depend on the budget that we have. So as long as we have funding available, and from what we've been assured from the government, Ministry of Finance and all, is that if you are able to exhaust the budget that you have, there will be more provisions. So I don't think we'll be limited by the numbers. Our objective is to catch up with where the world is, and to be able to build something which is state-of-the-art, and we can stand proudly that yes, we have the talent, and we have been able to build something what US has built or what China has built. Right now we are not there, but with the skill sets which are there, we may be able to reach. And it's very difficult to say that we'll bet on 4 and 1 will be there. It may not happen. We may need to bet on, say, 40, and maybe 2 will go there, or 5 will go there, 10 will go there. So it's like this endeavor of the government is something similar to what the VCs do without the skill sets and the experience of VCs. That's why we kind of take help from them and help for people who have worked in this ecosystem, including experts in technology and all, to be able to choose the right, bet on the right companies and right startups, and hope that they are able to achieve. Government, very often, the expectation is that if you fund 10 projects, all 10 should succeed. But it will not happen in this space. But if we don't take chances, we'll never be able to catch up.
So in fact, we were just discussing that I think there's a lot of collaboration that can happen. because the number of applications and they also have to build frameworks to be able to quickly evaluate and have a kind of a qualitative mechanism to score these startups. And so we could help, funds can help in making their pipeline processing more efficient so that they can do more. And maybe Abhishek, you can also talk about the fund of funds, right? The 10,000 crore. So
the deep
tech plus AI, right? So that's, yeah.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, there is a deep tech startup fund of funds which are announced in the union budget. And in addition, there is also a provision under the India AI mission, a fund of almost 2,000 crores, for which we'll be setting up working with the VCs and the investors to have a fund of funds model in which if the VCs, the identified VCs, they invest in a startup or in a company which is building on AI application model, then the government will also make an equal investment. And then the onus of deciding or choosing a startup will lie with the trusted VCs, so that we don't have to spend our time, energy, and expertise, which very often government may not have in all domains, and trust the VCs and then invest them and hope that some of them are able to be world beaters, as Vas was mentioning.
Right. Prashant, Abhishek made an interesting point about a reverse brain drain happening. He called out GUN, where, two Stanford graduates are sort of coming back to build. Interestingly, today I saw a post by one VC in Bangalore who said, there's a better chance that you will find Indian AI founders in the Valley than in India. And that they are moving to the Valley very early in the journey compared to the SaaS folks who perhaps move later on. Are you seeing that trend? Is that something to be concerned about? Because ultimately, that is their target market. The depth of capital is there. How do you address that issue?
No, I think I'd like to draw attention back to what Vas spoke about. All the workflows that matter across financial services, healthcare, any vertical sector that you can think about are actually sitting in the 20-mile radius of where we are speaking, right? It's in some service company or the other. I think it's just a matter of time where Indian entrepreneurs have to figure out how do you either learn to collaborate with these services companies, GCCs. There's 2,000 plus GCCs in our country, which are probably great places to collaborate for our entrepreneurs. Now, I spoke about platforms and infrastructure. Yes, there, day one, your first 10 design partners are not going to be in India or Bangalore. Day one, you got to be in the US. So I think there's two classes of companies, and we shouldn't confuse between the two. I think when you talk about people plus AI or the services workflows that are going to complement people in enterprises, I think a lot of them over time will be engineered as much from India and with knowledge here in India as in the Valley.
Right. So in the model so far, there's been a lot of focus on voice and local language capabilities. Now, OpenAI is also talking about enhancing local language capabilities. I think we spoke to their VP for engineering recently who said they're planning to do that for languages like Tamil and Hindi. And, probably the other models will also do it. So then where is the differentiation, where is the moat for Indian models when, an OpenAI with its capital, endless capital, Gemini, etc., are also doing the same in terms of enhancing local language capabilities and so on?
See, this will happen because there was a report that OpenAI's maximum number of subscribers are in India. So many of these
the fastest growing market.
Fastest growing. So they will look at India as a revenue center also, and ultimately they will customize them to suit the Indian market. But the value that will come for Indian developers and Indian entrepreneurs will be that given that they have access to a larger pool of data sets, they should be able to engineer it, and they will have to be ingenious in trying to architect, trying to minimize the compute that is required for training the same model, trying to reduce the cost in which they will be able to do. So that ingenuity will have to come. So it's not that just because a solution is Indian, they will succeed. They will have to ultimately compete with the best in the world. It's not that all their revenues will ultimately come from only India. They will have to have a global vision in mind when they are training models. Initial level of support may come from government, but that will not sustain them in the long run. Ultimately, they will have to have a business model. They will have to have the ability to compete with what others are doing. And the way Indian ecosystem is evolving, it's also forcing all the global entities, whether it's OpenAI or Llama, to customize their solutions for India. So it will be an evolving marketplace, and it will also require our teams to not get complacent just because they have government support or they are Indians and they can make substandard. That era is over. So we do believe that the solution that will come from India will be able to compete with the best, with the engineering skills that they have, and then they will be able to survive, even though the other products also come in.
Yes, Prashant.
Yeah, see here I'll add two other aspects. One is large-scale adoption for AI across the board, like a digital public good, whether it's education, health, and so on, is going to happen through voice. And I think a lot of those voice-enabled next-gen voice models will be built from this country, right? So I think there's a lot of innovation room there, and I don't think that's going to come from the US. The second, I think was also alluded to the cost per token and where is most of the costs in these startups going to, right? So I think that frugality at a very foundational level is what I think Indian startups will be able to bring to the table and change the cost dynamics in the way these models, how efficient these models are in inferencing and how we can contextualize that distillation for our country, and with that deliver a very different cost dynamic. Right. So I think this is a net innovation.
Right. Vas made an interesting point about how, the metrics have changed when you evaluate AI startups. For instance, founders are talking about ARR per employee, and 1 million, I think, is sort of the North Star. How does that work out in India? Because the revenue per employee here, would not be at a scale there. So these 40 plus startups that you're investing in, what are you looking at?
See, a lot of these startups are working on with global enterprises and global models. So I think some of it will benchmark to what Vas is talking about. And some of them, of course, will serve Indian use cases and Indian models, and there it'll be very different.
Right. Abhishek, the other question I had is, till now, the bulk of the work that we've seen for producing India's foundational models is being driven by startups, by researchers. Are we going to see any action at all from the bigger players, IT companies, for instance, which are sitting on huge cash flows? What do you expect there? Are you seeing interest from corporates? What do you expect in that respect?
You should be asking them this question, but I do believe that given the capability that our Indian IT industry has, and given from what we are hearing about Infosys investing into GPUs, TCS investing into this, they are taking a large-scale training of their team members, plus the services that they are providing to their global customers. All of them are wanting for AI-based applications. So there will be a need for doing this, for enhancing their capabilities, and I'm sure they would also be coming up with AI products, AI applications, use cases maybe in various sectors, because otherwise for them to survive without AI, it will be very, very difficult, because the whole world is going towards adoption of AI in even applications, use case, the way you write code, the way you implement projects, the way you architect solutions, the way you deliver even SaaS products. So that will be something that will be needed, and I'm sure they will definitely be able to offer that.
Right.
So
yes,
yeah,
Prashant.
here we are seeing both, Chandra. One, of course, there's a lot of, within these large companies, I'm sure they're thinking what next. And we are having some of the senior leadership come out from those companies. They know what kind of use cases make sense, and they are starting to partner with VCs and build new companies, right? And there's also a third use case where GCCs are saying, okay, we want to, within our enterprise, here is the use case. Can you just take us as the first design partner and rework that workflows and make them more agentic or whatever, right? So I think we're seeing multiple ways in which there will be disruption within the context of the Indian services ecosystem.
Got it. So you had a stakeholder consultation on AI readiness assessment methodology. So what can you tell us in terms of your initial learnings, in terms of India's approach to ethical AI?
See, we did have the consultation, in fact, yesterday only with
UNESCO.
With the UNESCO. Then before that we had the consultations in Bangalore also, and Hyderabad and Guwahati. So the idea is that India's governance framework regarding AI, which has been articulated before, and there was a report also that came out from the principal scientific advisors, a committee headed by him, and there also it articulated the techno-legal approach with a focus on innovation while restricting the harms that can be caused. That was the broad framework for doing that. But in order to ensure that we are able to eliminate bias, we are able to ensure that AI models are fair, are explainable, are understandable, are responsible, accountable. So those principles of ethical AI development, those are well enunciated in that report. But to ensure that actually applications are doing that, you will need tools for ensuring that. So under the India AI mission, the safe and trusted pillar, we have set up the AI Safety Institute, which is a conglomeration of institutions working towards development of these tools. And these tools will be available for all AI developers in order to test their application that they conform to the ethical responsible principles.
Right.
But at the moment, we are at the stage where we are more inclined towards promoting AI application development rather than restricting them.
Right. Just to follow up on that, do you think it will also make a strong case for regulation of AI in India, considering the AI adoption is happening at a breakneck pace? India is already one of the biggest markets for open AI. So, will we revisit that? How are you thinking about regulation?
See, regulation will primarily be to ensure that any AI application that is developed is compliant with the legal framework and the laws as they stand. Like whether the DPDP Act is there, or how do you limit the impact of deep fakes or misinformation, or something as simple as that, like a very simple use case which would need to be regulated, is that we all know that in India, prenatal sex determination is banned. It's legally not allowed to go to ultra radiologist and try to find out the sex of your yet to be born child. But if you have the ultrasound images and you upload it on a Gen AI model, the model will tell you what it is. So again, that is something that the models will have to train themselves to adapt to Indian laws. So those are the use cases wherein there are any potential violation of an Indian law or the potential harm to an individual or a group of individuals which are prohibited under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, the erstwhile IPC, or the provisions of the IT Act, which can cause any harm to any individual or group of individuals, that will be regulated. But per se, we are not inclined to having something similar to what the EU has. So we are more inclined towards promoting innovation, but while having enough measures with the use of the existing legal provisions to prevent any harm that may take place.
Got it. Prashant, a final 1 minute. If India has to prioritize, say, 3-4 action items over the next 12 months to unlock AI's potential, as a theme session says, what would those be? 3-4 very specific action items.
So I think there'll be enough talent that will be available for application building, AI talent. I don't think there is really a lot of paucity of talent there. I think slightly more deeper research-led AI talent. How do you unlock some of that, given that we don't have a large pipeline of researchers? I mean, there's a lot of researchers in India who have gotten into some amount of translation research in the science-based spaces. But I think in computation, we don't have a similar large enough pipeline of researchers who are able to do, for example, the DeepSeek kind of re-engineering that they were able to do, a value addition. So I think we need to be able to unlock that. We need to also be able to find platforms in India where we can land global talent, right? If you have capable people, and there's always ways, there's always reasons why people want to relocate to other parts of the world. So we need to be able to have platforms where you can safe land them and give them ways in which they can contribute. I think this is something that we have been talking about
Like a
with the government.
sandbox,
I mean, just good platform. I mean, we have Art Park, for example,
Yeah.
that we have done here in
IISc.
IISc. So can you expand that? Can you have many more art parks where these people can... I don't think many of them want to go to academia per se, right? They want to come to a place where they can get capital, build, and scale. So that's the second. And yeah, there are 2-3 things like this that we can really unlock. Yes.
Right. I want to ask you, Abhishek, have you been doing any vibe coding? Vibe coding. It's the latest thing. Not yet. Prashant?
No.
Prayank built some very interesting
I know.
app.
Prayank does that. I'll only promote what Prayank builds.
Great. On that note, thank you both very much, and please feel free to catch up with them on the sidelines. Thank you very much, Abhishek and Prashant.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for that. Our fireside chat, Unlocking India's AI Potential. Introducing now our second session of the evening and the first panel discussion, titled AI for the World, Beyond Silicon Valley's Playground. A compelling discussion bringing diverse perspectives from varied ecosystems await. With Ashish Vaswani, founder, Essential AI, Professor Mitesh Khapra, IIT Madras and lead at AI for Bharat, Pranav Mistry, founder 2.ai, and Prayank Swaroop, partner at Accel. May I please request the moderator, Network 18 anchor, Naini Thakur, and all the panelists.
Everyone, thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. Very excited for this lovely conversation. We have a diverse group, as the MC rightly mentioned. For starters, I want to start this conversation off with the big picture, right? Pranav, I'm going to start with you. You've been part of the Silicon Valley ecosystem. What observations do you have about the current state of AI enthusiasm there, and how do you compare it to that in India?
Okay, first of all, thanks. It's an honor to be part of this panel with all of those people, and of course the other people. I personally feel that I've been in part of the journey of a lot of technological revolutions, like from smartphones to wearables and now AI and a lot more other spaces. I don't see major difference now as much that I used to see before Silicon Valley or here concepts-wise, or even any mental differences that, okay, there is a more talent there versus here. Resources, yes. I think there are still some resources challenges, or I would say the differences that we can definitely see. But I see more and more enthusiasm towards building localized, or I would say globalized kind of companies here more than what I'm because I'm also part of the Korea market or Japan market, and I've seen those markets. I see this is an epicenter of this innovation that is happening now. I'm really happy about seeing that.
That's great to hear. Ashish, coming to you, tell me about your thoughts of the same, and what do you think are some opportunities or challenges that you see in order to possibly bridge some gaps that exist?
So I guess you want me to talk about enthusiasm, the questions you're asking before?
Yeah.
So I'm probably not the best person to answer this question because I'm not as familiar with the AI activity in India, but I'll give two specific data points. But first, I actually want to talk about the change in AI enthusiasm in the Silicon Valley itself. which is dramatic.
Before you get
Right,
there,
right.
am I getting this right? Are you coming to India after 16 years? Is that?
Yes, so the immigration, they couldn't find any stamp in my existing passport and my previous one. So thank you. First of all, I'm
Yes,
delighted
what
to
an
be here.
honor to have you
and
back.
thank you, Accel, for actually having my picture up on your event page, so I could tell them that I'm here for a real reason. I'm not here to steal victory, a cricket victory, or anything like that. So yeah.
Wow.
But
Sorry,
so what? It's been about a decade since the transformer, the model that my collaborators and I built, and I would say that there's, to me personally, as I think companies, or at least the company that I'm trying to build at Essential, we want to build open science frontier models. Companies are less about models as they are about kind of factories for revolutionary ideas, being able to take courageous bets, executing, having a sense of urgency, and then pushing technology, right? I think when we started, I think there is a lot of enthusiasm to have some of these revolutionary ideas come out of startups now than just large labs. And in fact, what's interesting is when I was a Google brain at the time of the transformer, there were a reasonable number of groups that were capable of such revolutionary ideas, but all of them in large companies, and now barely any of those are actually in these large labs. Most of them have kind of migrated to startups. So what does that mean? So of course, just that trend itself, and also I think that the timelines. I think startups have an incredible sense of. They force you to adopt the right timelines for progress in AI. Now, my exposure to Indian AI has been through two brilliant individuals. They're starting a company, TurboML, and I thought they're so sharp that heck, they could be some of the best. They could be some of the best masters of the AI craft. Doing foundational research work. So I personally think that there is no. I don't think that there is any. There's any shortage of bright people, of course. The second, maybe this is a slight complaint, the term sovereign AI is often used as a muted AI. I think that we should just here build the best models in the world, not just models for the region. And I've been hearing that across the program, so I'm happy to hear that. But typically, sovereign AI is referred to as somewhat less intelligent. Heck, why would we ever do such a thing, right? So anyways, extremely enthusiastic, as you can see. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Mitesh, coming to you, tell me about your observations of the differences in AI adoption and application, as compared to Silicon Valley versus India.
Yeah. So I think...
Is that?
Yeah. So I think my view, based on my limited knowledge of things, is that I think in Silicon Valley there is much more euphoria around AI as compared to India, where I think we are taking a much more measured approach, is what I feel.
Okay.
And sort of this goes back to how India operates, right? I mean, that's, I think, at the core of it. In the West, I think if you have something really good, you will find customers who are willing to pay a premium for that.
Yeah.
Right? But in India, it doesn't work that way, right? So just look at the kind of plans that Netflix and others have to have in India.
Yeah.
199 rupees for one device, two devices, and we try to optimize it, right? If we try to optimize even when we have the ability to pay, and even when we see value in what is being offered, right? But in the West, if you're building something for a market, you have a prior, right, a higher probability that someone will be willing to pay a premium for that if I build something which is of high value. I think in India, startups have a harder time because even if they have a very good idea, a very good product, I think finding a paying customer is very hard, right, who is willing to pay that premium. And I think that reflects in the euphoria and the enthusiasm, right? So that's what my observation has been. Even on the adoption side, that carries on, right? I mean, because people want to get high value at low cost. Until that happens, people are ready to wait out this wave. It's okay, we'll get it a bit later. I'll wait for AI for 2 more years when it's at some price that I can afford and so on. So I think that is what the difference that I see.
Thank you. That's a very interesting point. We'll come back to that in just a bit. Priyank, I'd like to bring you into the conversation as an investor. What trends do you see when it comes to AI investment, particularly, between there and here?
In India?
I mean, if you can compare and draw some comparisons.
Well, I mean, vast at the stage, but essentially all of us, I think investors are hungry for AI startups right now.
Yes.
Trying to find companies because this is a revolutionary technology which has come, and everybody's trying to, hey, every part of the GDP, global GDP is going to get changed because of this. So if you ask me, like, for me, it's very exciting personally. I wake up and I like, today, what holds, the day holds some interesting startups to meet and what industry is going to get transformed. I'm looking at drug discovery, material sciences, space tech, defense tech, all impacted with AI. And it's like that surface area was not there a year back.
Yeah.
So, and actually, I would say a year back in India, most of these companies were not even available. A year back, most founders in India, and I remember this conversation, I was talking to a founder, he was saying, is this really your way of just, because I don't do AI, reducing my valuation? And I think today, the change is very different. I think it's harder for me now, the smartest founders are actually going to the valley and sitting there and saying, okay, this is where I'll find what is cutting edge. And they want me to come there and meet them, Indian founders. So it's a very smart move Indian founders are doing. So I'm actually quite excited. And I think almost every investor in India is trying to find and fund AI startups and deep tech startups. And maybe the two things are correlated now. The AI wave has led to the deep tech wave in India as well. Yeah. So it's actually quite exciting for us.
Just to follow up there, do you really think, though, that the funding for deep tech startups is enough? Or do you think there is much more that's needed?
No,
I know the government has a fund, but I mean,
no, I think Abhishek said the right thing.
Yes.
A lot of patient capital is required.
Yes.
And Ashish made the point that all this funding was getting inside big companies and the big labs. They need long-term capital, and VCs don't operate like that. Investors don't operate like that.
Yes.
So I think we also are changing. We are writing larger checks. We are trying to be more patient. So in India, anyways, you have to be patient. So, but I think for fundamental breakthrough research, you need to be even more. We have been for example, we have been investing in health tech for a very long time, fundamental research, and companies take 14, 15 years to get to their first vaccine, so I think it's kind of a similar pattern, and it feels a bit like that to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Pranav, coming back to you, earlier you mentioned resources and how possibly the Silicon Valley has a bit more of that. Can you possibly expand on that and probably talk a bit about what can we change in terms of mindset also within the India AI ecosystem?
Okay. I think I will cover 2 points on that one. One thing I want to continue what have been spoken before, that I will speak in Hindi, say "Ghar ki mulki dal barabar." I think that concept applies to India a lot. I've seen that not only in India but also many countries, same kind of experiences, that like same kind of technologies and experiences, but if it's coming from some outside startup, we see very differently and highly, and that's part of it. So the resources in this case here, it's mostly a perceived resources, I would say, because even like I don't think that now the second layer models, that is what is coming now. This is the second chapter of AI which is starting. It doesn't require like those 10,000 GPU infrastructure cloud anymore. What it requires is a different way of looking at it, different approaches, or different way of say, okay, now we will give you an experiment time or that thing. So I feel that the resources, like even just give an example for us, we build our own Sutra models 2 years back, train in our own infrastructure, own cloud cluster that we build in Silicon Valley. And people were not believing it. I mean, like literally, people were not believing it. $6 million spent. We built a very wonderful models, multilingual. As soon as DeepSeek moment came, people now started believing that a small startup can also build a powerful models and technologies part of it. So I would think it's more about the perception of the thing, as well as the resources in the perceived sense that need to be changed a little bit. It's not just about the GPUs or the capital or this part of it, but the ecosystem of the talent, and that maybe add that.
Very interesting. Nitesh, I'd like to bring you in here, with the work that you guys are doing with AI for Bharat. You know, with India specifically, I mean, of course, Silicon Valley, we know the kind of applications that are there. Tell me about some India-centric applications and innovations that can happen, you know, possibly in sectors like healthcare, education, agriculture, at scale with AI. Not only in making it accessible, but also affordable. And how's that going to happen?
Yeah. So I think in India, we'll really have to focus, as I said earlier, on delivering very high value at a very low cost and at population scale. And all three are very important in India, right? And I think the kind of things which they have already been said, right, in the education sector, healthcare sector, I think Priyank also mentioned in his opening speech, can we have a tutor for every student, every child in the country, and speaking in the language of that child? And that's a very India-specific problem, given the diversity that we have, not just in languages, but in dialects, also in accents, right? And can we make AI work for everyone? Right? So that's a problem that we'll have to solve. And we will run into this problem of how do we make it sustainable, right? How do we make it affordable? Otherwise, people are not going to pay for it, right? Of course, government subsidies and others are announced, right, through the India AI mission. The cost of building models is getting subsidized. To an extent, the cost of hosting models will get subsidized, right? But unless we really innovate on making solutions available on the edge so that a lot of cloud costs get taken off from the table, right? I think it will not really get driven at population scale. So making things work on the edge for a diverse set of languages, diverse set of demographics, for the diversity of India is something that we'll have to innovate on.
Yeah. And, you know, going back to the point that you made earlier, that a majority of the startups that are there, and there's some incredible startups that are also on our list that will be unveiled later today, they are doing some amazing work, right? But they're not, like you rightly said, finding the customers in India.
Yeah.
You know, their largest market happens to be something like the US. What do you do? What's the solution there?
No, I think I think a mix of solutions are required. I think government will have to play a very important role, right? And also, as Priyank mentioned, right, some of the VCs will have to be a bit patient with their capital, right, and make sure that these companies succeed, right? And as India grows and the paying capacity improves and so on, at some point these models will become viable, right? But AI by nature is a very experimental technology, right? So it's very hard to get it right at first try. So to keep experimenting. And India, our advantage is that we have the biggest experimental lab that anyone can have.
Can you bring your mic a little?
Sure. Oh, wow. Okay. So biggest lab that we can have, right, in terms of our population. Can we deploy things at population scale so that we can learn from these things, right? In initial years, let's think about building, right, and getting this technology right, while in parallel we figure out how to make it sustainable. Just because today we are not being able to make it sustainable, we'll stop investing in building it, I think we'll suffer in the long run, right? So that has to continue.
Great. Ashish, bringing you in here. You guys are still sharing a mic.
We're sharing a mic. We are talking about resources.
Yes.
Thanks, sharing. Yeah.
You know, I think a big pain point through a series of conversations that we've had has been R&D, and particularly the lack of that in India. I've spoken to a bunch of people who are doing some incredible research in India, but my guess is that it would be only 5x, 10x of that in the US and in the Silicon Valley. As I also understand, there are specific R&D labs that are there in the US that are government funded, funded by many investors. Tell me a bit about, you know, how R&D could possibly help India and you know, why it's been, say, a game changer for the Silicon Valley.
I like this question because I ask this question. I asked this question even for Essential. How can R&D be beneficial to Essential as compared to well-capitalized startups, for example? And I think there is some commonality. So the way I approach this again is we're not building just models. We're essentially building you can say we're building a factory for models. That is, we every single day, our goal is to conduct a better experiment and the models are just an outcome of that, right? So I'll give a very personal answer, how I approach this. For Essential, and in general, I think company leadership is extremely important. Extremely important. I think it was Vas that talked about, you know, combining liberal arts and technology, and I recall that Steve Jobs famously talked about this blend, and Steve was a fantastic leader, right? I think that I believe, you know, in the last 5 months, we transitioned from being into more doing fundamental work. We've made incredible progress, and it's been fairly simple, having very clear convictions on the research ideas that you care about. I have strong convictions. For instance, when DeepSeek R1 came out, my entire team was, this is great, let's do reinforcement learning. I said, no, let 99% of the world's population run to reinforcement learning. We're actually going to drink from the source of truth, where all the capabilities are imbibed. That's pre-training. And we're going to do it far more efficiently by being rigorous, by taking these approaches, right? And so, and now again, Essential is a very personal mission. So, and this is I can get into the, I can labor in the details, but I think leadership is incredibly important. Convictions and focusing on a few directions and a sense of urgency. So you focus on a few directions, you see them through. If they don't work, iterate. But I think that over time, you will reach a state, a flow of research experimentation and create a rarefied environment where it's inevitable. And sorry, this is maybe far more optimistic than I should be, but then I wouldn't be a founder otherwise. Yeah. But I think this is actually possible. Yeah. Yeah, and again, sorry, I answered it with respect to Essential. I think that this many of the things I said would permeate across, you know, when you're challenged with respect to resources and also hire incredible people, and you know, if they have good ideas, let them run with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I believe we have about 5 minutes, so I'm going to take some last thoughts from all of you, starting with you, Pranav. Tell me, what is one thing India must do to lead in AI globally?
I would say that, like, we should not think that this AI chapter is over. I would say this is like a 1% of the. Yeah. So one of the things that I also keep seeing this one, that model. I was a student of Marvin Minsky. Completely different school of thinking of the AI. I really
it's not his fault. It's not his fault, by the way. I mean, he's just a student of Marvin Minsky.
There's a lot more to discover and a lot more to happen in this world of AI. So India, rather than catching up the chapter 1 game, we can directly jump to chapter 2, chapter 3, and the future of the AI. Even the chatbots, if you see, like, is a 5% of the AI, I would say. Like right now, even itself, what is going to make more difference in healthcare, in governance, in finance sector, is the quantitative models or even world models part of it. So we need to start thinking, and India has that opportunity to start thinking beyond catching up the language model game and do something differently, do something different altogether in AI space. And that's what I think India has the opportunity to do this thing, because we have awakened now. I mean, like, we are now awake that and take a risk. I mean, isk hai to risk hai. I mean, like, that's what kind of we should do that thing.
Yeah, but the LLMs is also equally important.
I'll just take maybe 15 more seconds. I was part of the journey from Samsung Galaxy S1 to all the way to the line when display screen started becoming smaller to bigger to bigger to bigger to bigger.
Wow.
After some level, it need to start again growing smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So the LLM right now at that era, like now we are not talking about which big parameters or how many parameters or what's the size of the model. We are in fact talking about which one is the more efficient, which one can run faster, which one is domain specific, and that part of it. So I really think that there is a lot more to this AI game than as we just seeing in the surface. And so language models is the thing of past, I would say, for me and for this world. Yeah.
Interesting. Priyank, your thoughts on, what is the one thing India must do?
Yeah, I think
for India population scale models, I think Mitesh alluded to it, Pranav alluded to it, like it has to be on the edge models.
Yes.
So it has to be smaller models. A couple of days ago, I put out a Kannada learning app. I didn't know any computer vision 3 days ago. No computer, zero. Like, but with the cursor and all, I could develop something which people liked, and I was like, I'm a VC, I should be doing this, should not be doing this, somebody else should be doing this. It could have been done by a... So I think there are a lot of problems out there to be solved, tools are there available, but the moment there will be an inflection point, I truly think there is not enough AI on the mobile right now. The only models you have is like Gemma 3N and some of these, and a year later, all of our phones will be 100x smarter with AI, and then that will be a moment you will see a whole new wave of mobile AI coming in. You know, it's like 13 years ago when I joined VC, one of my partners, Mahendran, every VC wanted to invest in a mobile company. And he was like, what is a mobile company? You are investing in a business, mobile is just a channel, right? So it's something like that, right? So what are the problems which are going to be solved? And something like that, inflection will happen, then all of us will be chasing mobile AI companies. So I think all founders in India don't need to think about what is happening now and what has happened in the past. They need to think 2 years ahead. And this is going to happen. And I need to invest my time and energy on that today so that when the moment arrives, I will make it happen. And I found founders to be very scared of spending that money once they raise money from VCs. Like, oh, but you're telling me to take risk and, you know, what if my funding finishes off and dies? And I think the problem is, I tell my founders, you are in a war zone right now. This is the time to fight, and I gave you money, like I think somebody said this, we have given you bullets to fire, not to keep them and just like, you know.
Well put. Yeah, that's well put. Ashish, what about you?
So it's amazing. I couldn't agree more with some of the answers, and I couldn't disagree more with some of the comments here as well.
Would love to
but
hear
first
both.
and foremost, yes, don't be a slave to the consensus. Choose your own path. I think it's incredibly important. I see this. I'll be controversial, and I'll call this dangerous obsession with small models. I think obsession with efficiency or building capabilities efficiently is important, but I don't necessarily think small models is. For me personally, I think it's about capabilities first. And I really appreciated this sort of observation that things had to grow bigger before they actually became smaller, because the first iPhone was not a small phone. It was just a better phone, right? I also do completely agree that we're in the early stages. It's been a decade, and every year we take out, and again, this call it hubris or whatever. Every year we unshackle what these models or the transformers are capable of, and I think there's so much more. But I think it should be a capability first perspective. If I actually knew, if an oracle came to me and told me this is the model and it takes 1 trillion parameters, right? I mean, there's enough techniques where I can just train this on 2,000 GPUs. It'll just take a long time, but that'll be the perfect model, right? So if I knew the answer and it has to be big, well, so be it. I can just train it. It'll just take time, but I will be ahead of everyone because that's a perfect model. But again, yeah, I love this point about not being a slave to the consensus.
I was asking you in the morning
Please.
that, you know, is transform model, will something disrupt transform model? You know it. And he's like, Frank, I made it and I have zero idea who will disrupt it, right?
So he's offering a much stronger version of what I said, but let's move on. Yeah.
I think one thing which is clear, right, which all of us said, is that we have to invest in the long term, right?
Yes.
And I would say the horizon is not 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. We should look at 50 years, right? And we shouldn't just focus narrow-mindedly on AI, but also look at elite things, peripheral things around it. For example, we really need to up our game in the chip world, right? We need to start making chips in India. That is going to be a very, very crucial factor for us. We also need to focus on education. Right? Upskilling AI talent in India. And that I mean across the board. Not just high-end AI engineers or AI developers, but also upskilling our population in becoming friendly, usable, becoming comfortable in using AI, right? How does a layman use AI in every day, right? How do you build the confidence around that, right? Then also on the government side, a lot more work needs to be done on the policies, right? How do we make sure, if you're talking about population scale deployments, are we ready with the policies? And all of this is a long-term investment, and we should be in the game for the long term. We should not bother about things, okay, today we are 2 years back, 5 years back. We'll catch up in the long run, right? That's what our game should be. Yeah.
Wow, I think this was a fantastic conversation. lots of debate points which we can possibly go on about. Thank you all so much for your time. This was a great conversation. Thank you.
The four of you, we have what infra layer, application layer, what network platform layer. I think the foundational layer is missing, but I think Pratyush is somewhere, so maybe we should call him. All layers covered? Sure. Okay, so, the previous session spoke about the differences that we are seeing between Silicon Valley, India. The session before that, Prashant spoke about how there's been an incredible pace of startup creation in India itself in the AI space. And we have NISA. And Sharat actually ran entity for a very long time, and then he decided to start up. So tell us about that startup, Kida, Sharat.
No, so I actually founded NetMagic, which entity acquired. And we run today India's largest data center company with more than 4 million square foot of data center space and 300 megawatts of IT load. When ChatGPT became viral, we used to run a compute cloud without GPUs, and we started seeing a lot of demand for GPUs. Unfortunately, entity didn't want to, invest in. They felt that the business was too risky, so I took permission and started NISA to set up an AI compute platform in India.
A round of applause for that. Never too late to start up. And NISA, I think, has already raised, what, $30 million?
No, $53 million.
53. Wow. Short by, I think. So how's it been so far in terms of the business opportunities you see here, the demand that you see?
It's both exciting and challenging. We've already launched our compute platform. We've built our own orchestration platform. We've built our own. We've layered on top of it both ML ops and LLM ops platforms, and also built inference endpoints and for clients. In addition to that, we are also building. We are taking into account security for AI. So we built our own Aegis framework of products for security in AI, and also a separate track is on observability. We are seeing a very good adoption in multiple areas. One is on the research and education side, where compute clusters are being used. We're also seeing adoption from AI native startups and ISVs. We are seeing, we just recently got impaneled last week in the AI mission. And last but not the least, we are also seeing very good traction with enterprises. So particularly the banking and financial sector.
Great. Yeah. Sanket, this has been like a rebirth for you, the entire AI revolution. Literally from the brink, InVideo's come back. Someone told me InVideo is the largest customer for OpenAI in India. I don't know if that's true. Maybe you can...
I'm pretty sure that's true. It's not working. Okay.
You can borrow Soham.
Yeah, we have very large customers of OpenAI, Google, all of them at this point of time, yes.
And in terms of the growth, how do you see this happening? And are you also a little worried? Because image generation, video generation has gotten so good. Every week there are new models. So how do you sort of retain your edge?
Yeah, I think all businesses are built on very specific type of insights that matters to a particular segment of users. So what Sora does or what Google does, and we deeply engage with them, what we believe is they're building these tools for different set of people versus us. And there are many nuances when we change segments. Someone needs more control, someone doesn't. Someone has a lot of taste, someone doesn't. Someone wants something quick, someone wants something that saves them $200,000 of shooting. So there are many nuances. And when a particular type of technology emerges, there are different ways to do different things with that. And when we, and the track that we run on, we feel very confident that it's a different segment that we are going after versus an AI video creation. And we actually love it because I think a lot of people do think that OpenAI is going to come for something or Google's going to come for something. But that is the insight we have, that I don't think that's going to happen in this particular part. And then once you have conviction, because of multiple reasons, you just operate with like a particular zone of belief.
Right. And have you also benefited hugely from India's creator ecosystem? You were at the Waves Summit, I think, recently in Mumbai. So is that also something that's really helping you get that shot in the arm in India?
Look, I mean, if we look at our business, then it's unfortunate that India contributes only 5% to it, 4-5%. So do we get a lot of users? Yeah, we do get enough users. But the cogs in the AI market, what we need to do for that, I think doesn't add up in the Indian market today. And I don't think that has anything to do with InVideo. I think that has to do with how much money we take home every month as Indians. And just the financial structure of this nation today. And that is how it's going to look like for a while.
Goes back to what Mitesh spoke about in terms of getting paying users.
Yeah, correct. Like you won't get paying users because of where AI is, the cogs are very high, and you will just not get enough paying users in this part of the world today.
Right. Soham, tell us about your own journey at Composio. Again, you know, whichever investor I've spoken to in the last 6 months, I asked them what's top of mind for you when it comes to AI startups. They all bring up Composio. What's special about Composio?
Yeah, I think we got really lucky with the timing of when we started. We're building the right thing at the right time in the kind of right ecosystem. I think a lot of what you speak about is mainly timing, right? Like, so talking about Composio, we started building coding agents to solve for, so Composio is essentially a simple way for developers to integrate a bunch of different applications with LLMs or like while they're building agents, right? We manage authentication, we manage a bunch of different things, and we reduce developers' time spent while building the application from like months to almost hours, right? We have a really good set of folks out there using us. We have more than 50,000 plus developers using us across the globe. And the thing is, it's just because we kind of understood the problem a bit early. We realized that very quickly that, hey, this is something that everyone is going to go through. We were building coding agents back in 2023 when LLMs are not even good enough to sort of, you know, build like basic reliable agents out there. And that kind of helped us, right? Because when you realize the problem early, you really have some unique insights around it, and you match it with the sort of industry also moving. You are able to come up with like unique solutions at each different sort of point in time when the industry is maturing, so that you are always the perfect solution out there for anyone out building sort of or solving the same problem.
Right. Manu, you work a lot on the data set collection aspect of AI. You know, what are the challenges? What are the opportunities that you see there in India?
Perfect. Super happy to be here. I've been on the stage a couple of times, and every time I've been sick. So I don't know what's on common there, but having my chai, so if I'm slower than usual, that's the reason. But I think, look, at Karya, what we have done is we have trained a workforce of 100,000 plus people to do all of these complex jobs that AI models need to scale. I think at the core of Karya is a fundamental belief that the communities we work with are not just excellent beneficiaries of AI, of course they are. They're also excellent builders of state-of-the-art models. They're excellent evaluators of the model. So the opportunity to me is for us to truly build inclusive AI is to employ the communities we want to include, right? So can we build AI models that truly represent every single person that we want to be using these technologies? I think Dr. Kalika Bali, who's going to be on stage right after this, has done such phenomenal work in thinking about gender intentional AI, thinking about AI that represents all of us. And I think at Karya, we have a responsibility and an opportunity to actually include communities that have been historically kept away from technology and center them in the AI revolution. And doing that in collaboration with our clients. We work, of course, closely with the government of India. We work closely with Google, with Microsoft, all of these companies, and thinking deeply about how can we deliver business outcomes in uniquely Indian contexts by employing Indians. And then you create this magical win-win situation where our communities can get earning and learning opportunities, but the models perform well in Indian context, to Indian dialects, to Indian accents, to Indian contexts, to different use cases. And I think that allows this magical combination to happen, and we're very excited about that.
Right. Sharad, as someone who's working at the convergence of AI, cloud, and edge computing, what sort of foundational infra do you think India still needs to support scalable AI innovation?
So I'll talk about scalable and sustainable. So first of all, the data centers itself, or the high-density data centers, because these are very power-consuming chips.
Yeah. Water guzzling, power guzzling.
So building high-density data centers. Most data centers today don't have a ready-made liquid cooling capability. And at NTT, we built some of these liquid cooling and liquid immersion cooling facilities. Next is, of course, the compute. But most important, right, is the data sets, which he's doing. I think Bharat Gen just released a whole bunch of data sets. AI for Bharat also, and Bharat Gen.
I think Ganesh is in the room.
Yeah, so he also released a whole bunch of data sets last week. The way I look at it is the soil is, there's somebody gave me this analogy that you take the data as the soil.
Okay.
If you take the agriculture analogy, the compute is the irrigation and the models is the crop, right? So data sets are most important. If you don't have data, if you don't have good quality data that's accessible, then you don't have, you can't train on good data. And but from an infrastructure perspective, compute and the underlying data centers that will house the compute is very important.
Right. Sanket, in terms of InVideo's own ambitions going forward, have you considered moving abroad? Are you going to be based in India?
Yeah, no, I get that a lot. So here's how I look at the world, okay? That I think there are no Indians, Americans, there are special people. And those special people might not be very large number in India in comparison and very high in the US for a number of reasons. Those people really, really care. They care, they are not scared, they don't want to copy, they have their own opinion, they have their own take. I think that we try to breed that in our culture, and if we do that, I don't know what should I go to the US and do and what should I learn. I can just do all those things from here. Everything's available on YouTube if you really are willing to learn. And that, like all the papers of AI are available on the internet. Like everything is right there. It is the intent, and I don't know if my intent changes when I change the country. It's going to remain the same. And I think and I actually think even in the world of AI, I don't think it's very different. It is simple, right? Like it's giving a delta value to someone and making sure that that someone, you are not competing with a lot of people to serve that person. All your metrics are good. You are keeping on adding value to that person or going to the next adjacent person. And all the technologies available, browser, internet, and now AI. And you have to create more value and make sure that you hit the right degrees of delta. And when you hit right degrees of delta, the TAM expands. And it will work. And I think that was not different in any other world. There are like very fundamental things to do. And I think that I'm just fine here.
You're fine here. We are happy to hear that. So, do you have a different take considering you operate more in the B2B enterprise space?
Yeah, I think like, I would disagree, right?
Because of the customer's different.
Exactly. So I was going to come
yeah,
that.
it's in my context.
That's what I said, B2C.
Yeah. So the thing is like, when you look at B2B customers, right? And most of our early startups, which were customers, were from SF, right? And literally I could point out like a square mile in SF, and like 90% of our early customers were literally from that square mile. And so for me, the geography actually makes a big difference because I can get very early feedback, very quick iteration cycle, go to their office, work with them, figure out exactly like how my customers behave, and like basically make sure that at the end of the day, they are super happy with the product. And so that's the delta in the sort of opinion.
Right. And follow up for you, Soham. So, there are also a lot of native tooling platforms taking off. Would that reduce the demand for middleware platforms? How do you see this?
So the idea is like middleware is always going to get killed, right? Like everyone's trying to kill you. People at the top are trying to kill you. People at the bottom are trying to kill you. Foundation models are getting into agentic frameworks and they're killing them, right? Applications are moving downstream. They are trying to kill you. So it's a battle of survival, right? The good thing is though, if you do survive, the prize is really big, right? So like to answer your question very succinctly, I think yes, a lot of people are creating basically, let's say, it's hard for us to survive, but as we develop more and more, sort of, as we create bigger and bigger moat, as we create bigger and bigger value prop, if I do survive, the prize is equally bigger.
Got it. Manu, in terms of the quality of data itself, we're going to have 4, Sarvam is already there, 3 more foundational models that the government has picked, 3 more startups that the government has picked to build foundation models, right? Socket, Gun, and Yanni. And one of their main focus is India-specific, language-specific data sets. What impact will that have in terms of improving the quality of data sets? The government also has AI Kosh, to which they've been adding a lot of data sets. So how is all this going to help?
Look, I think it's fantastic, right? I mean, we're very lucky.
As Sharad said, that's the soil.
Yes. No, I think I oftentimes feel like doing AI work in India today feels like being in the Renaissance. Like there is just so much good work happening. Like I can spend the next 14 minutes just telling you good startups doing good AI work in India. And that's just how much good work there is happening, right? There is Argo from Adalat in the audience. There's Rocket Learning. There is Gramhal. There's just such incredible work happening in the ecosystem. It's phenomenal, right? And to add to that, the support that the government has given, we're part of the Socket collaboration. So we're especially excited about being the data layer for Socket. I think for us, the data itself is obviously critical. And I think what the Kare experience teaches us is that it is obviously not trivial, but not impossible to build really high quality data sets, right? We pride ourselves on paying our workers a decent wage, and we actually believe the wages we give our workers are the reason why the data sets that we get from our communities. Of course, our workers work in their homes, on their Android phones, and they're collecting all of these data sets across image, speech, video, text. They're doing evaluations, they're fine-tuning models in their languages, in English, doing all of these complex tasks. And even the pre-validation accuracies we get are some of the best in the world. We've always hypothesized, I mean, we've been now doing Karya for over 8 years. We were started in 2017 at Microsoft Research, just down the street here. And even in 2017, this was a question that my co-founders and I had, which was, why is the data that we're getting so good? And I think our hypothesis has always been in India, language and culture are uniquely intersecting, right? So when we tell someone that you're teaching an AI model how to speak Tamil, and you're getting these wages for it, it isn't just meaningful wages for that few hours. It's also the fact that I'm preserving my language and my culture. And I think there is a lot of beauty in that, in how we intersect with language and culture, which I think is obviously worth preserving and very exciting. I also think that as we start seeing massive investments coming into the data layer, so there's work from AI Kosh and Mr. Nag, who's doing a phenomenal job there. There's work from Gates Foundation in open sourcing data sets. They work with IISc. There's work from Google on Project One. We work across all of these efforts. So our hands are full, and it's quite an exciting thing that all of these data sets are going to get open sourced, which means all the startups in the room can actually build their models on it.
Right. Sharad, do you think a lot about the second-order impact of AI in India? Because for a long time, I mean, even now, the IT services industry is the largest job creator in the private sector. Startups have created jobs, but not at the same pace as IT. Then we had a GCC wave. And many of these jobs are getting automated today. What will that mean for lakhs of engineering graduates who pass out from India every year? How do you see that? I mean, this is, of course, is going to be a global problem, but even so for India.
I think it has, upskilling is absolutely needed because as, it's a cliche that,
but,
you won't lose.
Upskilling in what? Because even learning coding now is not going to save you.
No, but how to, for example, how to use various AI tools, right, to make your job easier. But, and for the engineers, for the software engineers, as long as you can architect using what is possible, right, you won't lose. As the cliche statement is that you won't lose your job to AI, you'll lose your job to someone who uses AI more efficiently, right? So I personally feel that, yes, IT companies are concerned. I've met some of the CEOs of the IT companies, and while they are at the forefront of using AI themselves, but they are concerned on the low-level workers that they have, that they've deployed in hundreds of thousands of jobs, because all those will get automated. And but the good news is that they are conscious of this. It's already started happening. Klarna had announced how they would get rid of all their call center, and the stocks of all the call center and BPO companies came down crashing. So, so it is a genuine problem, but I think the stakeholders are aware of what the problem is and are taking steps to, so I think upskilling in various forms. It could be, for the low level, it would be how to do prompt engineering better, how to do, how to use AI better. For the engineers, how to use these tools like Cursor and other better, and, things like that.
I think that's also one of the pillars of the India AI mission, skilling. But, I was talking to this is for both of you, I was talking to the founder of Perplexity recently, Arvind, and he said, the pace of change is so huge that all I do is I wake up, I work, I sleep, I wake up, work, and I'm basically working all the time because I can't afford to take a break. If I'm away for some time, then, everything changes and I can't relate to it anymore. Are you guys getting enough sleep?
No, I slept 3 hours yesterday.
3 hours?
Yeah, that's it.
I think your investors should be concerned. You should get more sleep soon.
I think it's fine. It's also not the exhaustion. It's more excitement that keeps you awake.
The adrenaline that keeps you going.
Yeah. So
3 hours?
Yeah.
For the last, ever since you started composing.
No. It's like yesterday. When you're working in multiple geographies, you go through these phases.
And time zones.
And time zones, yeah. You have these issues.
Sanket?
I have a 1 month old at home.
Okay, so anyway you will get...
Anyway, yeah, I think it's...
I sleep 8 hours a day. Yesterday, because I watched the RCB final, and I had to take an early morning flight to come to Bangalore, I slept less. But otherwise, 8 hours a day, minimum.
Manu?
I should not comment. But actually, want to go back to your question on the jobs piece, which I think is very interesting. My co-founder, Safia, is in the room. She is our Chief Impact Officer and runs something called the Karya Institute, where this is exactly the question we are asking. The latest IMF reporting that we have estimates that 12% of India's labor force will face displacement effects due to AI. That's a little over 60 million people, and that is definitely a scary number. That report also came out before deep research. And we are seeing evidence in our company where we were supposed to hire someone and we didn't because deep research did a pretty decent job. And I changed the role of what we were, who we wanted for this. I think we need to answer 3 questions critically. First is, what are the jobs of the future? Which is to your point, what do we upskill people in? And then we need to figure out a just transition for these 60 million or more or less people.
Like a universal basic income.
Exactly. And I think we need to figure out what that transition is. I think countries like India, Kenya, Vietnam, Philippines that built one part of the middle class through the BPO revolution are uniquely vulnerable, in my opinion, and I think we need to figure out what these new opportunities are. Second is then skilling, right? Like, I think it's not enough for anyone to say, these are the jobs of the future, figure it out. I think we need to do the market linkages. And then the final thing, of course, is the labor piece of it. How much should these jobs pay? What are life pathways in these new jobs? And I think we need to come together. And I think, again, the India AI mission is doing a phenomenal job in convening a lot of these people to come together to just think about the future of work, especially in the Indian context.
Right. Yeah, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, if I could, again, I come from a very different generation, right? And so some of the point of views would be very different. But like, I would really ask, right? Like, so the way I think about humans is we have like two things we can do. One thing is we can do physical stuff. We can do intelligence, like some intelligence stuff. I think both of them are getting commoditized. And so, like, my obvious question is, like, of course you can search for jobs of future and stuff like that. But, like, why do we need jobs? Like, okay, if I need to grow food and if I have robots doing that, why the fuck do I need to do anything, right? If I have intelligence out there and that's like doing foundational research, like, I think we should be also somewhat prepared for that potential future. Like, I'm not saying like 5 years down the line, but I'm saying like 20 years down the line, wherein like maybe just like the traditional thinking behind like you need a job and like the job is important because the economy works that way kind of shifts, right? And just India produces enough stuff where people are happy and like just like the UBI mechanism kicks in, right? Like I think that is not
like a very utopian world.
But that's the AI I'm working towards, right? Which is like that's my idea of like AI succeeding, which is like just the utopian future, right?
Yeah, I think, look, I'll quickly respond to that. There's a lovely researcher, Eric Brynjolfsson, at the Stanford HAI Center, who says that if ancient Greeks, all the work that ancient Greeks were doing got automated, we would have gotten to vaccines sooner, right? And that is the optimistic take of AI automating a lot of the menial tasks that we have to do. Labor markets are flexible. There is enough. I mean, you have Asimoglu writing multiple papers talking about, look, in 10 years, it'll all be okay. And that is fair. I think the question is, in that 10 years of transition, what happens to people for whom there is no other option and they rely on jobs for day-to-day livelihoods? I think that is something we will have to figure out. Yeah.
Totally agree. Yep.
Sorry, you want to add to that, Sanket?
No. The only thing I think about is video creation.
Very focused.
I also named my kid Arjun.
Okay.
Wait, really?
Yeah. I just relate to the philosophy. And it's also like the name passed everywhere, so.
Great. The other trend that we're observing is, companies are not only getting created at a breakneck pace, but you need very few people. I think there have been examples in the Valley of 2-member teams, 10-member teams, building out $1 billion company. So again, is there constant pressure, I don't know, a self-inflicted pressure that, I have to have a lean company? How do you go about it?
Actually, no, right? Like, because if anyone went out to hire people, then I think, and you really, really want like high quality talent, it's extremely difficult to hire them. And when you hire more people, there is a communication overhead. Like there is a communication tax and then there is a context tax. So the fastest way anyone can work in the world is that just by themselves, because all the context is with you and you don't pay any taxes.
Yeah.
As you keep adding people, you pay the tax and then you go slower. When you go slower, there will always be like few people who will sneak in, which leads to bureaucracy, which leads to not taking bold things. Because if you end up in that, then like enough people will not do bold things, which largely inflicts culturally.
Yeah.
It's also cultural, right? So in small teams, you could do something, you could be politically incorrect, you could have very, very tight bonds, much lesser rules, which actually helps with velocity. And it's not, I don't think it's inflicting. We will go out and hire every time we need to, but it actually helps because I never have to compromise hiring anymore in many forms because I can still move forward.
Right. So?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing, right? Which is like, you kind of build company in an entirely different way. So, like, to give an example, right? Like, if I was planning to build a 5,000 people company, there are certain things I definitely can't do that I can do in a 50 people company. I can go to dinner with every single person in my team every day of the month. I make sure that I know them equally well on a personal level. If I'm building a 100 people company also, it starts becoming harder, right? I think it gives you like infinite leverage that you miss out on as soon as you start growing your team. So it's a very, very sort of, let's just say, it's a very high agency thing. It adds a lot of value to you and your team. And like it's an amazing thing to sort of be born into as a company, wherein like you can just have very small teams and very powerful teams.
I also say inside the office there's a running joke where we say that उस पे ही काम करो जिस पे आलू डालोगे तो सोना निकलेगा. चलो चिप्स के लिए कभी काम कर लेना, उसके नीचे काम ही नहीं करना है हमको, right? Like वो करना ही नहीं है, we'll let it burn, and we are actually very rigorous while picking to do something because we are like, let's be sure आलू डालेंगे सोना निकलेगा, नहीं तो नहीं करते. I would rather go home, sleep, or think about a problem till I find enough leverage जहाँ पे आलू डालोगे तो सोना निकलेगा.
This can be your company mission. Aloo daloge sona niklega. But we have 1 minute, so I'm just going to take closing comments. Question for all of you: what keeps you awake at night, apart from RCB matches?
What keeps me awake? I think the biggest challenges we face are in terms of deep talent. So just as we want to build, do innovation and build IP in India, just getting that top talent is tough. While India has a lot of talent, everybody's talked about how big our talent pool is, but getting that deep talent is not is a challenge.
And also having to compete with others to pay top dollar and hire.
Yeah, top dollar and retention also of top talent.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's been keeping up more recently is the productivity gap, right? Like AI, like I have a very English-speaking, computer-centric workspace, so AI is amazing for me. I would argue I'm at least 30% more productive than I was 2 years ago on my core day-to-day. That isn't the case for most of the people we work with. So I think how can we build AI applications that not only solve information asymmetry, which is what the sector is doing incredibly, so access to healthcare, education, career services, legal, all of that stuff, but how can I actually make sure that the people we work with become more productive so they can do more work in less time and then move on to do other things so that we don't have a situation where AI just makes all of our lives amazing. And then, 30 years down the line, we're having another conversation on how do we bridge the AI divide. I think we don't have good answers to figure out that productivity gap yet.
Right. So, or Sanket?
I think that insights are deteriorating very, very fast in business. And finding insights that work, that also like hits all the parameters you need to hit, is getting tougher. They are disappearing faster, and it's a pain in the ass to keep finding them. And it really
Why would you say insights in business are deteriorating?
Because the world's moving so fast.
So what was true to yesterday is
That can change very, very fast. And you have to keep like evolving that. And for that, like you can't just keep doing whatever. You need very, very sharp, detailed things with enough TAM that takes you from a place to another place and then another place. And to find them.
And to be flexible enough to accept that something is not working and move on.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think like eventually, I think everyone accepts it. It's just a matter of time when a startup has to accept it, and mostly people do. But the steps after that are typically just like time consuming. You need a little bit of luck, and you need to know that you can be more wrong than right, but the day you are right, it will work out. But you will have to have the constant energy to keep chasing them.
Soham?
Sure. Like for us, like we do a lot of frontier stuff, right? So for us, it's like looking at every day just magic happening and just being high on AI, right? Like I think that keeps me awake, like the adrenaline of looking at, oh wow, this is insane, this is so cool. I think like when, for example, VO3 came, I didn't sleep for 2 days. I was just all night like making videos.
Trying out different versions.
Like that was like amazing. What the fuck is happening, right? Like that keeps me awake.
Great. On that note, thank you all very much, and a big round of applause for these founders. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The topic of this particular panel discussion, is a challenge that has long existed. We are still in the nascent stages when it comes to deep tech, potential, and perhaps not even scratch the surface. And while we may look at the US and China and think that we may have lagged behind, the truth is that India still has a huge market. We have a big talent base, and of course the low cost proposition in R&D that we have had. So on that note, let me start this panel discussion by asking Professor Ravindran, how do you define deep tech, and how is it different from any other form of tech innovation today, sir?
Okay, so this is working right now. Let's see how long it works. Thank you for priming me that you're going to ask me that question. And so I actually had a chance to look it up, because I was not sure what deep tech means, right? I always thought deep tech was like more of a marketing term. So if you want to raise more money from the VC, you then use the word deep tech. And it turns out that's what it is. Okay? So I did look up. I did look up the definitions of deep tech. Okay? So the official, quote-unquote, definitions of deep tech is these are technology that really requires you to stay invested longer, but have a significant guarantee that the impact will be very high. Right? So that's basically how you hook the VC in. So you're going to promise them the impact is going to be very high. Right? But you have to stay invested, because we really don't know how to get value out of it today. Right? So in my opinion, so that would mean that this is tech that we don't completely understand yet. So AI is one of the purported deep tech, and also things like material research and quantum and so on and so forth. And these are technologies from which we don't immediately know how to drive value out of. But we see the potential that it's going to significantly yield, and both not just monetary impact, but significant social impact down the line. So I guess that's one definition of what deep tech looks like.
Dr. Harrick, would you have a different definition for that?
So I would agree with Ravindran partly. I think to me, deep tech is actually about building something that is actually non-obvious. It is actually significantly advancing the state of the art. I would actually reverse that and ask the question, what is shallow tech? Which is kind of the opposite of deep tech. So to me, shallow tech is usually application, relatively, you can say, straightforward, or applications that is composition of many things. Deep tech typically requires really doing something in an unconventional, non-trivial way that is very hard to replicate easily. And to me, that is really what defines deep tech.
Absolutely. Shekhar and Pratyush, when we talk about deep tech, what do you think are India's core strengths in deep tech today? I mean, is it across AI, quantum computing, biotech? I mean, what is it? Where does that lie?
I feel a bit like the student who missed the last few weeks of the class. I didn't get your questions, so I didn't prepare for them. Firstly, I just wanted to add to this thing about deep tech, right? So I think it is a concept that VCs use. Let's be clear about that. So it's about, in my sense, the venture risk that you take. And there are various kinds of venture risks you can take. And some risks are more about, can I push the boundary of technology, right? Which is not the obvious way to create value, just to be clear, right? I think, especially because it requires slightly longer term thinking. And that comes back to your question, where does India have strength? Frankly, in India, we have been doing deep work across pockets, but a deep tech company needs to be a full stack between doing the R&D, having a product, having the commercial model, and having the playground in the country to actually deliver that to companies with positive value, right? And that is actually a broader ecosystem muscle that we as a country haven't developed enough of, right? There are many good examples, and frankly, Ravindran from IIT Madras has shown a lot of good examples of it. But we are, I think, in the early stage of unlocking deep tech value, which is often disproportionately large. but takes more time, requires a more mature system. And all the things that you mentioned, whether it is quantum, whether it is space, whether it is AI, all of this, or even new materials, all of these are going to be in that category.
Shekhar, what do you think?
See, in fact, as IVCA, we tried to define that term recently. A technology that creates, at least on one axis, extreme disruption, either on price or some sort of value, either on time or on quality, that takes the current state to its knees. That is for us the deep tech from a VC world perspective, not for deep tech's sake. It has to disrupt the current way of doing. Like if an education costs 2 lakhs, can you bring to 200 rupees? If something XYZ, can you reduce by 10x? So that was a definition of deep tech. We kind of changed a little bit more to add, if a tech is available outside India, it's restricted in India. If that tech can be made in India, it is not deep tech outside, but definitely deep tech inside, such as semiconductor manufacturing or restricted capabilities for defense and some of those things. These are 2 areas we felt is a better definition of deep tech from a commercial setup perspective.
But that's actually, across sectors.
Yeah.
It's
like, for example, if I want to build, manufacturing at nanofiber level, it may be available, but may not be available in India. So, as a good example. So, that could be a deep tech.
But which sectors do you think, there's potential for, commercialization and in deep tech?
Yeah,
and some of the top ones.
So the next set of question is about commercialization. I would work backwards in terms of where the use cases are and which part of the tech I can plug in those use cases to take advantage of it. If the deep tech requires an entire ecosystem to change, then it is a massive, massive setup. And VC may not be the right way of investing. But if a plug and play is possible where phenomenal outcome, whether you take AI getting into robotics, pick and place is the old robotics models, but now with vision model, can you reduce the price significantly, make it no alignment required, and it can do it in a unmandated environment. You leave a dog here, it can walk around and walk out without being trained, is a deep tech at a significant cost reduction. So that part of things are possible right now. So for me, AI infusing into healthcare, therapeutics, aviation, defense, manufacturing, and education, every aspect is up for grabs.
Wow, that's a huge playground actually. Professor Ravindran, why do so many promising innovations in Indian labs actually struggle to reach the market finally?
Oh, I think that other panelists have covered that significantly, and I completely agree with what Mitesh said. See, this is what happens when you attend classes. So you can quote other. So I completely agree with what Mitesh said. So basically, the market really doesn't exist in India. So it becomes crucial for people to start looking outside for these. Right? So that's one of the biggest challenges. You don't find these, thriving here, right? So, and it's not that we don't have some of these deep tech companies even started from. For example, I think Cure started here. Yeah. Right. And then you had to move out, right? So things like that, right? So I think it's not that we don't have deep tech companies. We're not the capability is not here, but soon or later. Unifor is another example from IIT Madras, which basically had to shift. They became a double unicorn, but still they could do that only when they went out of India. So things like that. So the market absorption capacity has to be built in India, and I think it was discussed enough.
And of course, the VCs have to play a big role in that.
Yes, funding is one part of it, but we also really need the ecosystem to improve, right? So we need a capacity. This, I think, again, going back to Mitesh's example, right? So we are not ready to pay for some of the additional benefits you're going to get from deep tech, right? We're happy to take something adequate. I mean, there was this amazing series of ads which actually captured this, right? So you can show whatever you want, and then finally he comes back and asks you, "Kitna deti hai?" Right? So as long as we have that kind of an attitude in the consumer mindset, right? So it's always going to be challenging. VCs can help build technology here, of course. We need VC support to do that. But then, unless the market is ready to absorb it, so what is it that we can do to help the market absorb this, right? Until that answer comes, it's going to be hard to sustain these here.
Right. Pratyush, what do you think? I mean, how do you sort of improve the market in that sense?
I think that I would just add one more point to that before the market point. I think we also need to build full stack skill sets. We haven't built chips in a long while, which are competitive. We haven't built large-scale platforms in the company in a long while, right? And we haven't. So if you look at where India makes money on software and elsewhere, we have been slightly up in the abstraction layer. In fact, if I look at our education also, it's very abstract, right? I taught GPU programming, for example. We would teach it at a place where you can, of course, build on top, but not go hack insides of GPUs and so on. And a company like DeepSeek, we think of it as it came in 1 year and did something. The people in DeepSeek have been hacking GPUs for 15 years. And they've been understanding the insights of what NVIDIA is, what PTX library assembly code looks like, and so on, right? So I think we also need a momentum around people, deep expertise across the stack. And not just now we can call it vibe code, but across the stack you need deep expertise. The market story is a little bit of a matter of coming of age, right? I think we are very efficiency conscious, which is a good thing, but recognition of innovation as something to invest in. I was talking to Mukesh Bansal the other day in his podcast, and we discussed about the 1% imperative, which is that if every listed company in India said, 1% of my profit I will put to innovate in AI, right? That is a huge playground for Shekhar to invest many, many companies in, right? I think that license to play is also useful. It'll happen, it's just taking its due course, and I think the governmental activities, the strategic sectors, larger efforts will probably see the lead, and then other companies will follow.
Right.
So can I maybe
please,
just to add to that, actually the full stack is very important, but you have to also think about the domains, right? It is not just the tech stack. Actually, most of the future growth and innovation opportunities are going to come at the boundaries of traditional disciplines, like, for example, drug discovery and AI, or molecule discovery, or personalized medicine, or whatever. I mean, all of those things. So, I mean, going back to even the previous panel, the biggest opportunities are going to lie at the boundaries of traditional areas. But that can only be realized when you actually bring expertise across these things together, which actually goes back to the full stack argument. I just wanted to add to the fact that the full stack doesn't mean IT stack. I think it has to actually start domain stack, which goes back to the very first session where I think it was brought out the fact that the India advantage of domain understanding is something that has to be brought in for us to start leading, because we have to essentially lead by redefining every type of knowledge work that is out there. And if we understand the tech stack and we combine it with the domain understanding, the boundaries, we will actually completely redefine everything, which is the India opportunity in my mind.
Absolutely. And just coming back into the the labs bit, how can we improve collaboration between research institutions and startups? Maybe Professor Ravindran can start, and I'll talk to.
So, I mean, I'm sitting with two former academics here. So it seems that if you actually make academics work too closely with the industry, they leave academia and go to the industry. So we have to be very careful as to what we recommend. So if people don't know, I mean, Harik had a pretty long career as a professor before he switched to coming to the industry. And of course, Pratyush, as you can see, he still hankers for teaching GPU programming even today. So, but the point is that has to be enabled, right? So the thing is, so one of the biggest problems I have with Indian academic curriculum right now is that we are not training people to be builders. right? So we are really training people to not necessarily get into a tinkering mode and things like that, right? So in fact, strongly discourage people from exploring. Forget about the IITs and forget about the cream of the universities. Maybe you can always come up with counter examples, but they are not the ones that are going to drive the larger innovation ecosystem, right? You're going to get very few people coming out of it. You go to many other colleges, like even not even tier 2, tier 1 colleges, right? There are labs which are opened only for when the inspection teams come around. Right? When the college inspection teams come, not for students to work on it, and only for getting the brownie points, the tick marks, and things like that. Our curriculum is significantly more rote learning based and things like that. So I think that has to change, and that comes from closer engagement with industry, right? So I know that there are several companies. I mean, IBM is one that I can pick out examples where they actually go and work with tier 2 colleges and making sure that they are building tinkering labs and workshops where they work with their hands on these systems. I think that's something from the very basic levels we should start inculcating even in schools, right? And then that would lead us to have an ecosystem, right, where companies feel more comfortable going and working with academic institutions because they know that they'll have value there, right? As opposed to them having to really dig around and then find out who are the few places where they can go and work with. Right? I think we should have a much more broader system rethinking of how we do the curriculum in India. So that's one certainly thing that we have to do.
Dr. Harrick, you've been on both sides, so what are your thoughts on that?
No, I would agree completely. I think, so one of the things that we have tried experimenting with is actually moving our industrial research labs onto campuses, because that's actually a great way to collaborate back and forth. We've also built what we call as a co-innovation network, which is sort of an open innovation platform, if you will, which allows us to also understand where the startups are going, the emerging tech, and actually bring everything together. So that is something that I think is very, very useful and powerful. The other thing I would say in the context of India is that there are these national missions now, whether it is in AI or cyber physical systems or quantum and things of that sort, that is actually funding to a great extent translational research, which is where many of the sort of academic ideas sort of often fall through and sort of the valley of death. So we have to find this sort of a tripartite model where sort of, if you will, TRL 1 to 3 actually gets done in an academic setup, TRL 4 to 6 happens more funded by these national missions, and then eventually the startup, the VC style funding to actually scale up. But it has to, in order for that to work, having clarity of purpose and conviction, as was talked about earlier, becomes incredibly important, because you cannot start left to right and then eventually figure out how to scale. You have to almost go right to left and then left to right, which is sort of an interesting thing that we have to probably perfect.
Absolutely. Shekhar, would you like?
Yeah, so I think we're thinking forward. I think we need to work backwards. Say, I have funded 2 deep tech companies, very similar faculty, PhDs, postdocs, have been there. But the conversation started with them not about tech or the deep tech. Conversation started about the use case and the business model. And they had spent enough. Say, one of them said, I will reduce the cost of RNA sequence from $300 to $30, 10x reduction. And if I can do that with a new technology, would you be interested? That's where the starting point is, right? Another one, which is in the quantum, saying that I can demonstrate quantum advantage in the next 24 months versus 2030, 2035, and say a large set of matrix operations. And that's where the starting point is. Then it makes sense for us to back these. What happens is tech teams, product teams have some interesting tech. They start building it out, and then they start looking for use cases where I can apply. Instead, if we can get every one of our research groups and missions to start saying, assume you have built this, where this can apply and bring it down, you will see a material rush for a lot of deep tech companies. The capabilities of these researchers is unbelievable. But the approach and method is very poor. By the time they come, they're already exhausted because everybody has said no to them.
But is there a way to incentivize, these researchers to sort of think commercially in that sense?
That's the starting point. Actually, I wish not only the students, I would say faculties have to be part of industry right now to understand what happens. That's what I see in the, the Valley, in the Stanford and so on. So much of exchange, so much of activity happening. Thanks to IIT Madras, I see that part. I'm from IISc. I go there. I've been pushing very hard. How to get startups. They're in the Bangalore, but almost irrelevant in the Indian ecosystem from a startup perspective. Now they're starting it out. They're pushing it out. But it takes a while for everybody to understand. Because at the end of the day, all tech, deep tech, software, VC, everything else gets trumped by the business model. If you don't have the business model, everything stops. So I would start from there and work backwards.
Right. Just a follow-up. Are the current funding timelines and expectations sort of aligned with the long gestation periods of the deep tech cycle?
Actually, the gestation period is not the issue. Framing the problem is the issue. People don't frame it right in terms of, I give benefit of doubt, say 3 years, 4 years, even 5 years. It will get it done. But what is the impact of that? One has to clearly articulate. If you articulate, then you know how much is the money required and the risk factor, and somebody can compute it and do it. Most of the times is left to investors to figure out that, but not the team. And that is a non-starter.
Pratyush, just a follow-up to that. How do you see Indian investors, perceive deep tech, compared to, software sector, for instance?
I'm not an investor, so it's hard to say.
But your thoughts on
that? I think, investment is a very, very planned game, right? So I think everybody has a playbook to it, and I think they understand, like Shekhar is saying, they understand what the value creation is and so on. I feel positive that in India now we have an ecosystem where investors are willing to bet on deep tech. I think that little hill climbing we have done now in the ecosystem, enough money has been made with whatever consumer grade internet companies and so on. There's now this feeling, both pride and investment thesis to do the next set of things. And I think a lot of, I see the next 10, 20 years as being a very good time for doing deep tech in India, both because strategically we need it now as a country. We are waking up to it, and there is also the capital efficiency is also happening, right? So I see shoots of that. More can be done, but I do see that is positive.
Dr. Harry,
deep tech is actually a phenomenal category for investment. The challenge is it is ill-defined versus well-defined. If it is well-defined, I think unbelievable amount of money is there because you have moats in terms of tech, in terms of patents, in terms of IP. You have business model disruption. Say a blood test today in Bangalore with home collection is 1,500 rupees. And you look at the full business case and you look at what the lab costs are, and if you do fully automated, can you bring down to say 200 rupees? I guarantee you that person can raise $10 million today. But that's not where they start. I have an equipment, it can do this, it can do plasma, it has got a camera, it has got that. That's where they start. Somebody else's problem to package it. I think fundamentally you have to shift, if the investments have to happen, on the technologies to package, as I said, work backwards.
Right. Starting with value is absolutely essential, which is the right to left. Right? Yes. Start with value and then build the technology to actually.
Right. Dr. Harry, they spoke about this in the previous panel as well. But what is the role of the diaspora and, the returning talent in building the deep tech ecosystem in India today?
Well, I think it's probably just bringing a lot of the thinking. But I would actually say that it's not that we don't have the talent. I think it's exactly mindset change, which is actually starting from value and then walking backwards. That is required. And I think what is there in the Indian diaspora outside the country is actually a lot of that experience. If that is something that comes back, then I think it'll, certainly accelerate the entire piece. But it's not that we don't have that here.
Dr. Ravindra, do you agree with that? Do we have that sort of the talent pipeline to build that deep tech commercialization in India?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'll absolutely agree with that. I mean, we have seen that happen multiple times already. Like I said, it's not that we don't build it here. We build it and then move it elsewhere. So I think building it here is not a challenge. And let me actually, I mean, given that I'm in a place where we have a lot of VCs and things, I should self-promote a little bit, right? So I say one of the best models that you have for things is in IIT Madras. I think many people would agree with that. In fact, we are doing something very different right now. We have hired a team of consultants who go to departments and tell people, don't publish your work. If you have done something very innovative, don't publish your work. First, talk to us, right? We will tell you, I mean, if that is a way you can, productize it, take it to market, and then you go and publish it. This is something that we have started very recently. So to that extent, whatever you say, right, so talking about value, that is not something that we do readily.
That's not natural.
That's not natural thinking for us.
Historically, it's been about publishing.
We're getting people to come and tell us now, right? So that's something that we are doing. I think that this thought process should be inculcated in people. I completely agree with that. I don't think there is a dearth of talent. And of course, that's not to say that we don't want people to come back. Please do come back to India, because the more the merrier, right? So certainly there. And like Harik said, they do bring in the thought process, and so I think we should get them back.
Right. Since we're running short on time, I'll just move to the last question that I have, which is, what are 2-3 immediate actions that you would personally sort of recommend to unlock India's deep tech potential? I'll start with you, Professor Ravindra, and then move to the other.
You should ask the others. I mean, if I know all of these answers, I'll still not be in academia. I'll be joining.
Dr. Harik.
Well, I want to actually go back to the previous panels. There's a lot of that we had talked about skilling for AI. And to me, actually, the thing that we should be thinking about is AI for skilling, actually. Because to me, I mean, what would keep me up at night? I think the question that was asked, which is somewhat similar to what you're asking, is what will you do with 1.5 billion people? Right? We have to actually find ways to augmenting them to become almost supercharged with technology so that they can actually move mountains. Which is not to say that they should all be trained to do prompt engineering or things of that sort. It should be actually the question is, how do we actually use AI to make them better versions of themselves? That's a huge opportunity. So in some sense, I think if you think about, half-life of a skill has shrunk from 30 years to 6 years, and it's shrinking fast, right? All decisions that people are making based on tacit knowledge is becoming obsolete faster than ever before. So how do you make people better? Using technology is probably our biggest, both a threat and an opportunity, right? I mean, if you don't do this, we'll have challenges. And that's really where I think we should be thinking about.
So I can add, because what Harik said triggered something in me, and I'll take that clock because it has 15 seconds more on it. So, so there are a lot of people, very, very, very smart kids today who actually understand problems, right? Because they are living with those problems, right? So what we really should be thinking about is how do we take the skills to build solutions to those problems to these kids? So I've actually seen several initiatives in Tamil Nadu where people are actually training people to do software development and things like that, where the language of communication is Tamil. Right? These kids have, once you teach them in Tamil, they pick it up very quickly and they build solutions which they see around them. They are building solutions for the villages. They're building solutions for the farmers that they're seeing around them. So we should enable that. And I would say that that should be something we're really looking for. I mean, talk to people who understand the problems first and skill them so that they can solve the problems for us.
Right. Pratyush?
Yeah, I would say two things. One is that we need to up our ambition in the country of what we build. I think there is, I see it as a coming of age. Now we are fourth largest economy, right? We are 1.5 billion people. We matter. What we build should be important. We should build it for ourselves. We should build it for the world. I think more ambition would do us good. And that involves also understanding the need for capitalism and the capitalist structure to create value. I think that's one part of it. The other part of it, I feel, is more cross-cutting. I think you brought about cross-cutting from a domain perspective, but I'm indexing on what Shekhar is saying, which is value creation being one of the prime movers. is a first order idea, right? But it's still not seeing up in our innovation. And that is because we don't have institutional strength in the country to cross-cut across these obvious ideas, right? What is research? What is value creation? What is talent management? What is strategy for the country? We need more institutions. And what is capitalism? How do we bring efficient capital? We need more institutions to bring that together. Now in the startup world, I clearly see it's all over siloed, very few people doing cross-cutting thinking to create value. But I'm optimistic it'll happen. But I think these two things, we should come of age and we should build better institutions.
Right. Shekhar?
My recommendation is very simple. You take everything we import today to India, anything that is more than $300 million worth, that's growing, say, 30-40% year on year. Find teams, there is enough teams. Say, go and disrupt that. Just go one after the other. In 10 years, you will build amazing capabilities. Don't have to do anything new. Simply take anything 300 million plus. There are so many things we are importing today. So many things. Deep tech, which is not possible to make today in India. Just disrupt one after the other. That list is 5 minutes in ChatGPT. Just you go through it and identify teams one after the other. There will be at least 300 ideas that can be built, $300 billion companies.
So you certain that we're going to soon have a DeepSeek or Tesla moment?
Pick everything we're importing to India today. Maybe equipment, maybe medical equipment, maybe defense things, maybe drones, maybe semiconductors. Pick everything and disrupt one at a time.
Right.
Where there's already a business model spend, you're paying massive import duty, just cut the legs off.
Right, that's a lesson for all of you. Please go check and approach Shekhar later once you find solutions. On that note, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and the panelists for this wonderful session. A warm round of applause for our panelists, please.
Hi everyone, I'm back. And we have some women on the panel. Okay, it's been a very long day, I know, long evening rather. I hope all of you have not OD'd on AI yet. We have this panel which is extremely loaded. How can India become the AI use case powerhouse? And we have some power-packed panelists really looking forward. I'm going to start with the women. On this panel with a very loaded question as well. India has scale, it has talent, it is getting there in terms of digital infrastructure. What do you think is, what will it take to translate all of these into globally relevant, high-impact AI use cases? Kalika, I'm going to start with you.
Oh. Finally, we have some women on the stage. So, I think the previous panel kind of touched on what I believe is the case. There has to be a lot more cross-cutting initiatives. less of siloing. We have the ability to, like this is something that I think Nandan said, and it's just so relevant, that use case powerhouse. India is a use case powerhouse. But I do really, really believe that a lot of work is being done in silos. Like we need the ecosystem to work in such a way that we build on each other instead of, just do our own stuff and take it forward. So that's what I think is the necessity of the time.
Absolutely. Geeta, you are currently running Niramai, which is, I think, an excellent example of a use case. Tell us, what do you think is the opportunity that lies in this gap that's there?
I think, first of all, it's great to be on in this forum, platform, etc. It's an amazing, meeting of minds. So, again, as some of the earlier panelists mentioned, I think India is already a powerhouse of great talent, which needs some nudging, needs some focus, needs some laser sort of integration, as Kalika mentioned as well. But one of the biggest things I think we should do is, I like Jugaad, okay? You have to do, we have to do with minimal, do more with less is exactly where, Indians can shine. But Jugaad with highest quality is important. Jugaad doesn't mean it works once and fails 100 times. That is not acceptable. I think we need to make that from the beginning, like whenever you're appreciating a student project or anything, what have you tested with? Where did you test it? I have seen people coming out and saying, here is a machine learning model, 99% accuracy. First thing I ask is, what is your testing platform? How did you test? What did you test again? I think that's very, very critical, right? And being honest about it, Again, we all know how AI can be built and results can be gotten, right? Some of us have actually done it. The training set and test set, and how do we sort of separate the two to get the best results? We know some of the scientists into do it also. So, but are there enough levels of randomization put in? There are several elements of this high quality thing. I think just that appreciation for performance, appreciation for, of course, data privacy, all of that again, right? And overall, international standards of offering is all we need to do. So I think incentivizing that is most important. Absolutely. I love Jugaad again, but yeah, that's the missing piece.
Very well put. Ganesh sir, I'd like to bring you in, coming to the use cases itself. I mean, how can foundational models like a Bharat Gen be adopted to sort of support high-impact sectors, which I spoke about in the earlier panel as well, such as healthcare? We have two wonderful health tech startups here, agriculture, education, and many, many more.
Thank you for this question. So let me give a little bit of the background, the genesis of Bharat Gen.
Yes.
It's funded by the Department of Science and Technology through their NMI-CPS program, through a Section 8 company at IIT Bombay called the Technology Innovation Hub. Now, what is the intent of a Technology Innovation Hub? It's basically to take academic research to TRL level 8, effectively, but not necessarily commercialize. And Dr. Chris Gopalakrishnan, he was there at our recent Bharat Gen Summit. He shed a lot of light on how the diffusion actually has to happen through companies, to startup. So the genesis of this Bharat Gen consortium was deep tech, bring deep tech. So yes, you need Jugaad, you need engineering. I don't like the word Jugaad, but engineering. But the engineering has to work closely with science. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Take it to a level that the industry can diffuse.
Okay. And
the other important aspect is, while we are funded by the Department of Science and Technology, Mr. Abhishek Singh was here some time back, we work very closely, and we have been asked to work very closely with the India Mission Ministry of IT. In fact, we just recently had a Bharat Gen Summit where we launched a whole bunch of models.
Yeah.
And we had very good industry presence, excellent presence from academia. And there were on the stage secretaries from 5 or 6 different departments. Department of Science and Technology, Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances, Skills. I think this whole of government approach has to trickle down to whole of India approach. We need to work together. And thankfully, Bharatjan has been set up with that intent. Yes. I like to quote this Sanskrit verse, this Subhashitam, which is a big inspiration for me. Amantram aksharam nasti, nasti moolam anaushadham, ayogya purusho nasti, yojakastratta durlabha. The yojaka, the very important aspect of connecting, complementarity, is what we are trying to do at Bharatjan.
Wow, that's very, very interesting. A round of applause for the kind of work that you guys are doing. Prashant, coming to you, Cure AI has been doing some fantastic work, and before you came in, I think your work has been quoted in the last couple of panels as well, in terms of how incredible it is. In terms of inclusion, as I understand, a large market that you guys have is the US and not India, right? It is a challenge, right? And an opportunity at the same time. How do you work to make, the technology that you have more affordable and accessible?
I think, see, for us, when we started out building Cure, we started about close to 9 years ago, when the wave of AI had not yet started, or at least there was a previous wave of AI which started in 2012 with the publication of a paper called, I think it was the AlexNet or ResNet, one of the papers from 2012, right, from University of Toronto. And that wave of AI is when we started in 2015. We said, can we, if AI can understand regular images, can it also understand radiology images, right? And sort of started building that technology. And as we got into it, one of the things we realized is in healthcare, you cannot make mistakes. So from an AI perspective, it has to be extremely, extremely accurate. Data governance, data has to be, there is so many compliances, so many laws across HIPAA, GDPR across different countries, right? Every country has their own data compliance mechanisms. So you have to adhere to those. Every country has their own regulatory clearances. US has FDA, you spoke about the US market. We have 18 FDA clearances. We are cleared in, more importantly, about 90 to close to 100 countries now. And that sort of allows us to sell in those countries. And the most important thing is that all of this, especially if you're building clinical AI products, it has to be backed by evidence. It's like a drug, right? If you will not take a drug if it is not backed by evidence or real world evidence or even clinical trials, right? Just like that, a medical device AI like what Cure is building has to be backed by a lot of evidence. So we always started with the perspective that we have to do cutting edge research, starting with engineering, and many people studied with Ganesh at IIT Bombay. We have probably 30, 40 IIT computer science graduates from Bombay, right? And started with a strong engineering data science team, build great technology, get the evidence, and then sort of you get the right to play in various markets, US, UK, Africa, Southeast Asia, India. And that then, of course, you have to figure out how to sort of embed AI into clinical workflows, because again, AI is just a technology. It has to finally help make a decision, right? If you look at AI, Gmail has a lot of AI, but you are using it as an email tool, right? Netflix has a lot of AI. Again, it's something that is helping you watch the right shows and movies. So again, for a clinician, you have to figure out how to embed AI into their workflows, whether it's reading a scan, whether it is summarizing EMR data, or converting a conversation with a patient to nuggets that can be inserted into an EMR. So I think we have gone through that journey and learned a lot as we sort of built out Cure.
Very interesting. Anand, finally bringing you in from an investor lens. What makes an AI startup in India truly scalable and fundable, especially when you're solving for Bharat more than solving for India?
Yeah, no, thank you. But I think when you're solving for India, right? So I think there's a lot of talk about India doesn't have the size, right, or the market. I completely disagree with that. With all the panelists, sorry. Yeah, I think India is a 4 trillion economy, going to 10, and then obviously the value. It's a value-conscious audience. So AI is a leveler, right? So globally, you can build the best technology now, and it's getting more and more available for everyone. And India has now the second largest talent base for AI. If you look at GitHub submissions and all that, we have the talent, the technology is there, and we have the largest consumer base who have, all of them have a smartphone, right? Like 500 million people are doing transactions, doing Paytm or like phone pay. Like, so you have a really available audience all through India. Tier 1, Tier 2, anywhere. If you go to villages, we spend a lot of time in Bharat. So there are a lot of problem statements yet to be solved. And these are all opportunities in India which can be solved, many of them using AI, right? And then you can bring down the price quite a bit by doing this. As an example, I think someone touched upon it. Arivihan is a company that we seeded through Atoms or pre-seed program. And they went after a very specific problem. Madhya Pradesh Hindi board exams. If you take tuitions, everyone takes it, but you go to the best tutor you can find in the neighborhood. But what they said is, can we bring the best tutors, personalized for you, video tutors? And those ambitious young founders who started that. And this year they got the best results, like some of the best results, the toppers are from their program, within 18 months of starting. This is one of the 40 companies that Prashant talked about. So there are problems available abundantly. It's for entrepreneurs to dream bigger. And what the Servam founder said, let's solve for India, now take it global, right? How can we go dominate the world, right? So.
Wonderful. Kalika, bringing you in. You know, I mean, we can't not talk about languages when we talk to you. How do you ensure that language models are not just linguistically accurate, but also culturally relevant? And I know context is something you feel very passionately about. You could possibly also give the key lime example, as you're given me as well. But tell us how important context is.
So the key lime example is this, that any machine translation system, the best in the world between Hindi and English, if you ask it to translate from English, John and Mary have a key lime pie that they need to divide between 5 people, right? It's a math problem, it's a fraction problem. I can guarantee that there's no translation system in the world which will not translate it into Hindi, and excuse me, people who do not understand Hindi, to John और Mary के पास एक key lime pie है जो उन्हें 5 भाग में करना है, right? But the key lime remains. And what you're missing here is the context. I'm not talking about like some rural Indian context or any other kind of context, but here is a context that if key lime pie, the whole crux of that problem is that it's round. You're solving a round fraction problem. So unless you translate that into a culturally contextual round thing, no one is going to, you can solve it to, translate it into Hindi, you can translate it into Tamil, you can translate it into Kannada, Bangla, whatever. But no one will be able to solve that problem. Because how many people in India know what a pie is, let alone a key lime pie, right? So I think that's a very good example of how important context is.
Absolutely, absolutely. It also translated it into chabi chuna, right?
Exactly.
Never forget.
And people do really think that if we are like, we have to do contextual or culturally sensitive translation, then John and Mary have to be translated into Ram and Sita, right? But that's not the point. They can stay John and Mary, but the key lime pie is the problem there. So how do you even identify what these culturally important events are that need the focus?
Absolutely. And is that why India needs an LLM?
I think India needs an LLM, which absolutely. That's one of the reasons that India needs an LLM. The other thing is like, when you were talking about, India to the world, world to India. I was just standing outside for a second and somebody said, we are talking about AI for India. But we are also talking about India for AI, right? Yeah. And I think the thing there is that in our context, India, the biggest advantage we have is diversity. Right? We're talking about population scale. We'll do population scale to do population scale in India, you have to solve so many diverse problems, right? And once you know how to do that, you can really do it for the entire world. And that's like been like the philosophy.
Absolutely, absolutely. I completely agree. Ganesh, sir, would you like to jump in? Cannot not include you in a conversation around languages.
Thank you. I love the points Kalika made earlier as well as now. Diversity should be viewed as a strength. I think the thought process, the seed starts here. I talked about how the Bharatjan consortium was set up with a whole of government approach. Ontologically, we need to be integral, right? But functionally also we need to be integral. I mean, just saying we set up something and functionally you're not able to operate doesn't serve the purpose. Now, what does that mean? I mean, for example, at Bharatjan, we have 7 consortium members across different IITs and triple IITs working together and see the strengths as complementary. I think that view is very important. The Sanskrit Subhashitam I said, one of those were, I didn't explain the meaning, but Amantram Aksharam Nasti, Nasti Moolam Anaushadam. There is no single root which is not of medicinal value. Now, is that diversity a strength? Absolutely, because you travel across the country, you'll find different roots in different places. If you adopt the same view across Indian languages, actually you'll find that, well, if you do word grouping on Hindi, right, since Kalika brought up Hindi, you will actually find that group words systematically bring the apparently separated suffix together, present them as a dependency graph. This amazing isomorphism across Indian language graphs. So we actually brought out a book called Samanvay with our colleague Professor Arnab Bhattacharya. Now, it's really this perspective that can drive India to actually be a leader for AI. Right? How can we operate? I mean, obviously, we need to go organically. We may first do it for the global south and then for the world. So we may have to do it organically, but the vision has to be integral. And the last point here, I mean, the Bharatjan Summit we just concluded, I think for the first time, at least in my understanding, we got people from all the cutting-edge Gen AI, LLM developers in India together. There's Kritrim, Intel, Intel, obviously, CPUs, and then there's NVIDIA for GPUs. We actually got together, IBM, AWS, and this cross-pollination should be actually viewed as a strength, right? Yes. So the last point I want to make is, even from problem-solving perspective, right? You can have government departments push out RFPs, but if you don't have a holistic view, you would often have the operation is successful, but the patient is dead. Why? Because the RFPs are successful, the problem is not solved. So white papers are required with a collective mood, right? So that we actually solve the problem. I hope I made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a very, very interesting point that you made. Geeta, I'd like to bring you in here. The kind of work that Nirma is doing, especially, with AI and healthcare, extremely powerful. When it comes to sort of enablers and barriers, how do you use it to scale such innovations in India, not just for private health but also for public health, which is where I think there's a big gap.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we heard from the previous panelist also about how do we make it cost effective, right? Yes. I think that is where the public-private comes in. But generally, if I think about India and how AI use cases in India comes in the context of your question, right? We have a lot of problems here. It's not solved yet. We have almost 75%, or I don't know the exact number, but more than 75% of population in the rural areas who don't have a doctor to go to if they have fever or even a very, very high emergency condition. So the problems are all over the place. And obviously, that necessity, drives the innovation, and not always Western solution would work because of the cost requirements and so on and so forth. So it can be a powerhouse of AI use cases because we are seeing the problems, we are feeling the problems, and many of the problems are better solved if you are able to relate it from your heart. Like I say, there is hard work, there is smart work, there is heart work, I say, right? It's really where you connect up the heart to what you want to do, it goes much faster. So that is really possible, let's say in India, because you see a lot of problems, right? Yes. Similarly, the kind of stringent rules that exist, let's say, of course, we are GDPR compliant and all that, what Prashant was saying. But when you start off in India, of course, there's DPDP law, everybody's trying to figure out what that law looks like yet, and so on. But it's much, much easier to do, let's say, a pilot here, with proper rules in place, user consent in place, etc. And also, after the pilot, try out in real field as well. So that is an advantage. Like diversity is an advantage, having problems around is also an advantage, or we can convert that into an advantage. The fact that huge population we have is also an advantage. So all of these we can take as advantage and actually innovate and solve problems which are solved in a very conscious manner. And that reverse innovation is really, really possible, right? Because anywhere you go, you want to save cost. I mean, nobody wants to put double the money when you can solve it at half, right? So that becomes relevant to the whole world, right? So in terms of, I think you asked about barriers or something. Yeah. So barriers would basically mean, one is on the mindset to think, big enough. Yes, I want to solve for my village, solve for my state, etc. But why not for the world? That thinking big, and how do you sort of design for scaling from the beginning itself? I think that mentality has to come. So once you're designing that way, then of course some of the barriers, particularly in healthcare, I feel is the clinical testing. The doctors are not so very, we need to have technologists and doctors coming together. Yes. And there's not huge incentive for people to participate in clinical studies and so on, which I think it can be a huge advantage. Also because, doctors are sort of, we have so much of population and they're serving like hundreds of patients every day. They don't have this extra time to do this extra innovation. So, I mean, I can see why that is, but, that becomes a barrier for clinically completely validating here. And also, getting international, possibly funding for an Indian company is not as easy as getting funding for a US, maybe that's a different topic, but I know there are investors, but I wanted to put that in as well, right? Because they say, why don't you flip your headquarters to US and then I'm here, here's the money, right? So that happens. So we need to figure out how we can bring up the credibility of Indian startups to a level that it is investable. So I can go on and on. Obviously, in a startup, you figure out a problem, you solve it, and that's the fun of it. Yes. Yeah, but maybe I'll pause here.
Absolutely. Anand, I'm going to bring you in since there was a conversation about funding, can't not. When you, as an investor, when you have to, probably invest in a startup, particularly AI for Bharat, if I were to use that. What are some key things that you keep in mind in doing that from an investor lens?
Yeah, I think AI for Bharat or whatever, right? So if you're building, are you very clear about the problem you're solving, right?
Yes.
So I think Shekhar talked about it like multiple. Is that a really deep enough problem that someone's passionate about?
Yeah.
And is it a large enough problem? And does AI give you an unfair advantage? I think I talked about it already. AI is a leveler, right? Why can't the next, you can pick your favorite, Google or a Meta or whatever, and the people, Microsoft, like the people running are Indians, the CEOs there. Why can't the next Google come from India? Think big, right? So why should we think just for Bharat, like I want to solve only for this small town and nothing wrong, right? I'm from, I have that background. So, but I think there are people sitting in small towns and 3 people can pick up a big enough problem and solve it. There are people doing that in Europe. If you go and look at companies, like if you take Spotify or Lovable, or if you take many companies, people there are countries which have population of Bangalore, right? And then solving global problems. I think the big thing is picking problems that are large enough and thinking big enough and not restricting ourselves. I think the money is there, whether it comes from Indian VCs, global VCs, money will follow wherever, right? So when there are good entrepreneurs solving for the big problems of changing the world, I think money will chase them, literally. right? So I think that's the ambition level needs to go up. It is happening already with the first generation of companies going public in India, right? The thing she talked about, it's now the reverse. Global companies want to flip back to India because you can list in India much easily than listing in the globe, right? India is one of the best markets for listing. So I think the tides are changing. The old rules don't apply. These kind of tectonic shifts don't happen often. When it happens, the good, amazing founders of India, from India and also around the globe, are going to step up and build some great companies.
Absolutely, absolutely. Prashant, I wanted to check with you when, I mean, you started the company, Cure AI, when AI was not as fashionable as it is today. We spoke about resource constraint earlier, particularly with India. At the time when you were starting out, did you get enough investment when you went out there? Because people wouldn't have exactly understood the impact of it.
I completely agree with what Anand said, right? That if you are solving the right problems and solving for the world, money will chase you. So you will get investment. I mean, I think somebody in the last panel also said, right? We are not thinking big enough. We are not thinking global enough, right? If we think, I mean, we have the talent to solve it. And for us, I mean, when we started Cure, we had an incredible advantage over everybody else. We had access to so much data, and we still have probably one of the largest radiology imaging databases in the world, which allows us to build much better algorithms than anybody else. I mean, so that access to data, diversity, we have access to a lot of different advantages in India, plus talent. I mean, talent is also there. So again, the question that I always have in my mind is, are we solving a foundational problem like you said? Kalika, is it the problem that you spoke about, is it a foundation problem or is it a use case problem? Because if it's an education use case, I can solve it using a prompt, for example, right? And am I building a foundation or a frontier model, or am I building a use case engine? And that is where we are building a next Google, Microsoft, or are we building a next Epic? I'm a healthcare guy, so talking about Epic, right? But we could be thinking about those as well. And I really believe that the advantage that India has, especially given that we have all these software services companies in analytics and AI, we could really be solving a lot of customer problems, and we know those problems with a lot of depth, right? And we could be solving those use cases with AI rather than developing. I mean, again, we could be using, I mean, I think of AI as internet or mobile phones, right? I mean, it's a technology that is available to us. So what can we do with it? How many problems can we solve? How big can we think? There is a lot to do. And I think India has the advantage to really build for the world.
Sorry, can I add something?
Please.
So if you take that example, right, healthcare, or if you take services in itself, it's a hundreds of billions of dollars industry in India. If you take healthcare, right, so if you break it down, what happens in the US from the time someone schedules to sees the doctor to the transcription to the medical coding to everything, if you take that whole process, it's tens of billions of dollar industry. A lot of that work happens in India today. And all of that is going to go, AI is going to change that whole industry. And we have an unfair advantage to be the #1 player there as a country.
Why shouldn't we be
doing that, right? So
why shouldn't we be the ones doing it rather than somebody else, right? I mean,
absolutely.
And the moment we start thinking of India as representative, we can actually get talent. So in the last 7 months, we have hired the top talent graduating from all the IITs back at Bharat Jil. Why? Because of inclusive mindset. If you're just trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, you'll probably just, I mean, either trim the square pegs, but the moment you appreciate that problem solving actually requires diversity, you're able to attract talent back.
Absolutely. Kalika, would you like to?
Yes. So I agree with everything that's being said, but can I put a word of caution? So here is the thing, because this is a very exciting technology. Like you said, it's a great leveler. We'll be able to kind of solve a lot of problems. There are a whole lot of problems to solve. Sometimes I feel that while a lot of us are rightly so focusing on problems to be solved via AI, right? Use cases. What are the use cases? There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of use cases in India. We are not imagining a future with AI. So this is a conversation I have with a lot of people. We are just so focused. You call it jugaad, I will say a pragmatic approach, right? Like we have a very pragmatic view of how to use technology, where to use technology. We are going to solve problems. But are we going to keep solving these problems? Do we expect that these problems will just continue forever? So what do we think is going to happen 10 years from now, 15 years from now? Are we still going to be building, I don't know, diagnostic tools for cardiac problems? Are we still going to be building tools for making education available? Or is this going to change the way we view education? Is this going to change the way we do healthcare? Right? And I don't think we have enough conversations right now in India about such things. And that I think when we start having those conversations, when we start taking those things forward, then it becomes India for AI, if I can say that.
Wow. In the interest of time, I would love to keep this conversation going with all of you here. But in the interest of time, I'm going to ask all of you this. If you had to bet on just one AI use case or sector where India could lead the world in the next 5 years, what would it be? Just one sector or use case. I'll start with you, Anand.
We talked about it, services, all kinds of services.
Okay. Kalika?
Language, multilingual.
Geeta ma'am?
Prevention is better than cure. Yeah, there.
Absolutely. Prashant, what about you? Sorry.
India will lead in AI for digital public as digital public infrastructure. Definitely, we have the advantages to do that.
Great.
I would again say language, which includes speech technologies, but by leveraging frugal compute. I mean, that's very key. I think there's crazy amount of redundancy in the entire pipeline, making it data efficient, making it compute efficient for language, speech.
Absolutely great. Thank you so much, all of you. This was truly a wonderful session. Thank you all for being there.
In fact, thank you to all of our panelists and moderators for giving us such a beautiful evening full of insightful discussions. As we draw toward the close of this evening's conversation, it's time now to turn the highlight of the night, the celebration of excellence and impact. We are proud to felicitate 30 trailblazing Indian origin pioneers whose contributions to the field of AI, spanning academia, research, policy, entrepreneurship, and investment, are shaping the future of this transformative technology. These remarkable individuals have been named to the inaugural Forbes and Accel list of 30 Indian minds leading the AI revolution. Please join me in welcoming Suveen Sinha, editor, Forbes India, to walk us through the vision behind these awards. Big round of applause, please.
Thanks. Hi, can you hear me? Oh, I'm supposed to be here. All right, my name is Suveen Sinha. I work with Forbes India. I will not even attempt to sound very insightful or intelligent about artificial intelligence because people far more qualified than me have already spoken on the subject. So I will stick to what I do usually, which is reporting and telling stories. And what I have to say, I will tell you through 4 very, very short anecdotes. The first is that I was speaking with some South Asia correspondents of a very well-known foreign newspaper, and we were just discussing how they should look at India for their purpose of reportage. And my advice to them was that all foreign correspondents, when they write about India, they try to look at the broad picture. My advice to them was to look at the narrow picture. Look at the context that India provides. It's very tempting to compare India with America and Europe and China all the time, but not always fair or accurate either, because India's context is unique, our problems are unique, and therefore our solutions must also be unique. And we just heard a panel talk about use cases, etc. But even while I was giving them this lecture, I started questioning myself that, are we doing enough of this? Looking at India in the context of India, especially when it comes to a century-defining technology like artificial intelligence. Now, my anecdote number 2. This morning, my colleague Nani, who was earlier moderating the panel, she and I were talking to a very well-known startup founder here. And he was saying that ChatGPT has made him 10 times more curious. So naturally, we asked, how? So he said that he often wonders why everyone trusts the Tata brand so much. What is it? That Tata can do almost anything, and people will trust the brand. So he said that earlier, to understand this, he will probably seek meetings with people in the Tata group and try to understand how does it work for them. Now all he has to do is ask AI to give him a report, and he gets a fantastic report within a very, very short time. That's anecdote number 2. But is AI in the Indian context only about ChatGPT, or is it more? So my story number 3 was what newspapers reported a few days ago, which is about Suman Madam. It so happens that in a school near Jhansi in Uttar Pradesh, the attendance of students, it has about 130 students, has increased from about 60-65% to 95%. Because one of the teachers, there are 7 teachers there, one of them took a mannequin and put a very simple AI in it, and now that is an AI teacher named Madam Suman, who answers very, very basic questions. Now, such a simple thing can actually be effective. Now, that tech is very, very simple, very, very basic. But look at the impact that it creates in terms of attendance of those 130 students in that school. So that, given all this context, how we are looking at AI, which is why when the opportunity came that we join hands with Accel to go deeper and wider into what is really happening in the area of AI in India. And what better way to look at anything than through the eyes and perspective of people who are actually doing it. Which is why we went ahead, and it's an exhaustive study. I'm deeply thankful to Accel and to my teammate Siddharth Sani, who actually first brought the idea to us, and then we got working on it. I will not go into the details of the method. It's there in the magazine, and you can see it, and the magazine is available outside this hall, and I would encourage all of you to have a look at it, not just those people who feature in it. So I think we have come up with something meaningful, something that might create an impact, something that gives us a lot of satisfaction. But also, let me say that while doing it, we had a very, very good time. Which brings us to my 4th short story of the day. I have a friend who is a filmmaker, well known, and he says that when he and his team have story sessions and scripting sessions, if nobody breaks a glass or a bottle, they think that the session has failed. So something should break, because that is how passion should run high. That is when they think they do a lot of meaningful work. In our interactions with Accel and with Siddharth's team, nobody broke anything. Partly because most of it was through video calls, and breaking a computer screen is not very advisable. But I think we have made a good start. And if all goes well, next year, I think we will break a glass or 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Saveen. May I please request you to stay back on stage. I would also like to invite Prayank Swaroop back up on stage to felicitate the awardees. All right, everyone. I need some energy in the room right now, a lot of clapping, because really, there is no better moment than right now, especially with both of you on stage, to reveal the logo of the Forbes and Accel 30 Indian minds leading the AI revolution. Big round of applause. All right, I will now call upon the awardees to come up on stage and receive their awards. This is in no particular order. So let's get started. First up, we have Balaraman Ravindran, IIT Madras. The next awardee is Mosam from IIT Delhi, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us this evening, but he still said a few words expressing his gratitude.
I'm really grateful to Forbes India and Accel for including my name in the 30 Indian minds leading the AI revolution list. It's an elite list, and I'm honored to find my name here. As we think about the AI future, I think AI would be embedded in every domain. And to develop this future for any nation, be it India or any other country, it is important for all the stakeholders to come together. These are people who are AI researchers, AI engineers, these are people who are domain experts, these are policymakers, these are people from industry, these are people from academia, from non-profits, from government. All these need to really come together and have a strong dialogue and develop this future. I hope that the event today takes a forward step in that direction. I'm really sorry that I've been on a sabbatical for the last year in New York, and so I have not been able to attend many events in India, including this one. But I'm returning in 2 months, and I hope to be there and take this conversation forward in my capacity.
Next awardee on stage is Ganesh Ramakrishnan, Lead Bharat Gen. Up next, we have Preeti Jyoti from IIT Mumbai. She too, unfortunately, could not be here in person, but let's play a thank you note from her.
Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there in person, but I'm very grateful to Forbes India and Accel for including me in their inaugural list on 30 Indian minds leading the AI revolution. I thank all my students and collaborators for all of our joint work on building speech and language technologies for low resource settings and Indian languages, for which I earned this recognition, and I share this with all of them. So once again, heartfelt thanks for this recognition, and I hope to interact with many of you in the future.
Ms. Preeti Jyoti. Our next awardee is Mitesh M. Kopra, IIT Madras, AI for Bharat. again from IIT Bombay, is Sunita Sarawagi. She too could not be here this evening, but we have a message from her.
Thanks to Forbes India and Accel for compiling the list of 30 Indian minds leading the AI revolution and including me in it. Even though most of the AI revolution has been outside of India, I hope we are able to turn our late entry into an advantage by strategizing on the flavor and amount of AI that is best suited to our needs. Thank you.
Our next awardee, Aravind Srinivas, co-founder and CEO, Perplexity. He's not here? All right. So we can accept the award on his behalf for now, and we will move on to the next awardee, Arvind Jain, CEO, Glean. Not here either? All right. More awards for us to collect. Ashish Vaswani, co-founder, Essential AI, is definitely here.
I would like to take a moment to thank Forbes India and Accel for this prestigious recognition. It is a true testament to the hard work, innovation, and commitment of everyone at Fractal, as well as the incredible AI ecosystem in India. Actually, I am Shrikant's AI avatar. I think the real Shrikant is at the door.
Hey, what are you doing here? I won the award. Thank you, Accel. Thank you, Forbes.
Our next awardee, Nikki Parmar, Essential AI, Adept AI Labs. Unfortunately, she couldn't join us this evening. We have Abhishek Singh, Additional Secretary, MeetY. Please do join us on stage. Not be here in person, but we have a thank you note from him. He is none other than Manish Gupta, head of Google Research India.
AI is such a profound technology, transforming every industry, poised to transform every aspect of how the world will be run. I'm really honored to be in the list of 30 Indian minds leading the AI revolution. I would like to thank Forbes India and Accel for this recognition.
Next awardee that we have in-house is Dr. Harik Vin, CTO, TCS.
I'm honored to be recognized by Forbes India and Accel as one of the 30 Indian minds driving the AI revolution. This recognition is not just mine, but it belongs to all the Infosians who have been working in delivering our company's vision to be an AI-first company. With our unique approach of walking the talk by applying AI at scale internally within our own organization, and then using these learnings to reimagine our services and reimagine the industries for our clients. The journey is long. Thanks to everyone who has been part of this journey, and this is just the beginning.
Our next awardee is Kalika Bali, Senior Principal Researcher, Microsoft Research India. Is Srinivas Narayanan, VP of OpenAI. He couldn't be here with us personally today, but he has a little message for us.
Thank you, Forbes India and Accel, for this incredible honor. I'm really humbled to be included among India's top minds driving the AI revolution. I believe India will play a defining role in the global AI story, not just as a large user base for whom this is an incredible tool to amplify their potential, but also as builders, innovators, and thought leaders in AI. This recognition is a reflection of the momentum we are seeing. AI transforming people's productivity, and unlocking new possibilities across education, healthcare, and entrepreneurship everywhere, and especially in India. I'm truly excited about what lies ahead and look forward to deepening the partnership and our presence in the country as we build AI that serves everybody. Thank you once again for this recognition. It means a lot.
Our next awardee, Sharat Sanghi and Anindya Das, founders name. Up next, we call Laina Emanuel and Dr. Rimjim Agarwal, founders BrainSight AI, to come up and collect the award. Our next awardee, Surojit Chatterjee, founder of EMA. Collecting the award on his behalf is Vedant Sharma, as he could not be here in person. He has left us a thank you note, which we will watch after Sir collects the award on his behalf.
Hi, I'm Surojit Chatterjee, CEO and founder of EMA. I'm honored to be included in the 30 Indian minds leading the AI revolution, and very sorry to be missing what I'm sure is a great celebration. I want to take this opportunity to thank Forbes India and Accel for nominating me for this recognition. I would also like to thank my investors who have put their support and belief in me, all of our employees who have worked tirelessly to get EMA to where it is today, and of course my mentors and teachers who have helped me along the way to take me to where I am today. And finally, last but not the least, thanks to my amazing wife for being the best support system out there.
Up next, we have Manu Chopra and Safia Hussain, founder of Karya. I'd like to now take a moment and congratulate all our awardees this evening. Each individual that's been featured on the list will have their profile published in the upcoming print edition of Forbes, which, by the way, is available exclusively for you here this evening. So we invite you to please go to the pre-function area and grab your copy. Suveen and Prayank, I believe that this momentous occasion now calls for a photograph. So may I please call on all the awardees to come back up on stage and we can have a nice group photograph.